All right. Yes, we are live. Welcome. CLS After Dark. This big blue marble we call Earth, third rock from the sun. CLS After Dark. I'm your host, Mark. Kind of rhymes. I just realized CLS After Dark. I'm your host, Mark. I'm going to have to change that intro line already because that's going to geek me out. And here with me already in studio. He's been on before. The man, the myth, the legend, Blackbeard. He's a sailor on the high strangeness going on here. And he's got a beautiful, very beautiful hat that he just created in the matter of seconds before we started. You want to tell everybody about yourself and that hat? I mean, because that's the most important thing right now.
I think I should. This hat was a gift to me, a Christmas gift to me from me mere moments ago.
He literally stepped off camera for a second, and all I could hear were rustling noises, and then there it was, and then this is how he presents himself. So, all right, hey, what we're gonna hopefully again, we're trying to have fun with these CLS After Darks. Always leave a comment if you've got something in particular that you'd like to see. Stephen and I had been talking about this, well, because this is the kind of shit we just talk about anyway. So, we were going to do lions and tigers and bears, think of saying it that way, like UFOs, aliens, and cryptids, oh my type of thing. I think with the drone / UFO activity just of the last couple of weeks, I think we're just going to have to start there and then just see where the direction goes. Redbeard might join us. I'm not 100% sure. And then Better Call Paul is going to try to chime in. I think he's watching. He's got something else going on. And then he's going to chime in. He's got some kind of interesting things on the paranormal side of the house that would be kind of cool to talk about. So my only other piece of housekeeping, and then I will turn it over to Blackbeard, and he can tell everybody about that fucking awesome hat he just made, is so just like a little bit just of what we got going on. Next week is Christmas. So we're not going to there will not be a Thursday live stream, but we will do the CLS After Dark next Friday, the 27th. And that's going to be our friend John coming on. And I tentatively have another person coming on, and we're just going to sit and talk about the United States Marine Corps and just have a fun time and just talk war stories and, answer questions and just talk shit. I'm going to be calling them crayon eaters the whole night, and I'm sure they're going to have names for me. But, and then the only other thing, somebody did send me an email talking about one of the CLS After Darks. I think we're going to probably do this over on Millstone Self-Reliance Group. And that's that first Monday in January. Gosh, we're going to have to look at that too, because I think just off the top of my head, that's a stupid day. No, I'm wrong. Nope. Well, that's the 30th. New Year's Eve is Tuesday. So just like tonight, next week, not really sure how it's going to play out. It's the holidays, but I think that's what we're going to probably do, is respond to that one person's email. And we're going to talk about, that list of classes that we really wish that our grandfathers had taught us. So that's probably going to be the Millstone next week. Our good friend John, and probably P-Rick. And then we're going to sit and talk about the Marine Corps and what it means to eat crayons. Come on, tell us where you got that hat. Fill us in. Where do we buy one of those things? Is that going to be on my Centerline site, or is that just
Well, Mark, that's up to you. I haven't copywritten the design, and if you want to steal it from me, I give it to you, Mark. I give it to you. That's my Christmas gift to you.
So wasn't the design you just wrapping around your head and squeezing it tight at the top?
Mark, all I can say is that this was handcrafted in the United States. And it has the accompanying quality that you would expect with that level of craftsmanship.
Is it US or Berry compliant material?
Mark, I really can't speak to that. That is classified, highly classified information, due to the effectiveness, of course, of stopping any telepathic communications coming into the brain. So, but I'll just say that you would appreciate it.
Well, I'm gonna maybe have to order one from your or send you some Venmo money or something, order one. But hey, well, let's just kind of get right into it with that whole joke you made about it's classified. What the hell? Let's just start off with the question. What the hell do you think's going on because it isn't just New Jersey, but everybody just keeps talking East Coast. So let's just maybe just focus on that. But New Jersey, the drones, what do you think's happening, brother?
Well, it's a good question. I think it's pretty well established that they are in fact drones. And while, as I understand it, there are circumstances in which Gene, nice.
Yep. Yep. All right.
Um, yes, but while there's circumstances where what you'd think of as a classical unidentified flying object can imitate conventional aircraft, I don't think that's what's happening now. And so the bigger questions are, yes,
Yeah, I should
yes.
maybe not do that. That might be that might just kind of be distracting. But apparently, if I just painted this dome silver, it would be just as good as what you're wearing on your head. So it's probably pretty true. It would be. It is almost just as shiny, right now. So
Yeah, so the answer is I don't think anyone aside from the people that are actually controlling the drones really knows what's going on. Maybe that with the exception, the caveat that I find it very difficult to believe, and I think that to a certain extent, the governmental authorities have already admitted that they're aware of what's going on. Now, you have a certain set of possibilities, right? So amongst those possibilities is that these are foreign actors, in which case it demonstrates either some kind of gambit that the government's been placed into to where they can't shoot these down, either strategically speaking or logistically speaking, because they may be carrying something which is dangerous. People have floated theories that they are our own, that are searching for something. I've even heard theories, which we discussed very briefly prior to this, that this has to do with essentially a psychological preparation for a false alien invasion that's been on the books for decades. But when and if they would ever actually attempt that, it's hard to say. People always throw out blue beam. I don't buy that. I've actually never been interested in blue beam. Just something about it is very like boring to me. But some people really love that. I don't think it's blue beam. I think they're literal physical drones. People say, well, they're over the horizon drones, so that's not possible, and I don't know enough about drones to really comment on that. All I can say is that I don't think that they're UFOs. And I will also disclose that when it comes to the topic of UFOs, while I'm interested in the nuts and bolts hardware insofar as it exists, I'm far more interested in, to be honest with you, the anecdotal experiences of what people have said that they've encountered that is piloting the crafts, the things that are inside is more interesting to me. It's like seeing a guy driving a really nice car down the road. Some people love the car, and some people are really interested in who the guy is that was able to have that car. And I'm really interested in who's driving the car.
yeah, and what makes them tick to get that car? You know,
Yeah.
because just because you're wealthy doesn't mean like there might be other issues behind it. So it would be very fascinating. Again, just think of Elon Musk. I'm trying to think of people who are very wealthy, who are also really interesting. Like why did you just do this? And to hear his logic behind that. That's actually a good point, as opposed to marveling at the really cool car or the cool rocket ship that he has or whatever. The cool gun or whatever that thing might be. Hey, but I kind of want to come back. So you're going to rule out that you're going to rule out like the blue beam / false flag side of it. Is that kind of how I understand you correctly there?
So the definition of a false flag is posing as someone other than you are to commit a essentially a crime, to instigate usually some form of warfare, and then blame it on the people that you were posing as. So are if this is a false flag, then they would need to establish identity for whatever's operating the drone. So for example, let's say they wanted to get into a war with Iran, then what you do is you come out and say, as the intelligence and as the government, you come out and you say, hey, look, we know for a fact that these are Iranian drones. Meanwhile, you're piloting them, right? They're
Yeah.
your drones. And then you have your drones, you do something awful with them, you hurt somebody or destroy something. And then you say, look what they've done, and now we're at war. That's how a false flag works. I don't really see that happening. I don't see they're up there, they're sniffing around. It's kind of curious why they're there, but they haven't blown anything up as far as I'm aware. They are over sensitive areas, but there could be a number of reasons for something like that. So I don't think this is technically a false flag. I think that if it is a foreign actor, it doesn't speak well of our defenses. And if it's us, then they're obviously they could be running an exercise. It may be that they're looking, like the one theory is that there was a nuclear payload that was brought here and they're looking for it using those. I don't know. I don't know how you search for a nuclear payload. I guess you look for radiation signatures, but you'd have to have instrumentation that was sensitive enough to pick that up over not just in terms of altitude, but over the geographical area. Maybe they have that tech. I just don't know a lot about it.
Yeah.
But
And even for these are large drones. Uh, is that tech in the larger drones or is that tech in the smaller drones? Because the moment you're starting to miniaturize, like so the idea of having a van full of this sensitive equipment and you're driving around New York City, for example, you'd be like, oh yeah, I can see that. That makes sense. But then to your point, but now I've been able to reduce that, miniaturize that technology, still have it be as effective as it could be, or maybe even better. And then I'm just flying grid patterns over an area. And then to your point, and I also then in that same drone, now you also have to have other things to weed out the other type of interference or false positives that you might get from some other type of signal, especially if you were anywhere near a hospital, for example, right? So x-rays and radiological materials there. So I'm not really seeing that, to tell the truth. I'm not buying that. And I know that's what they're trying to say to us, like, oh, don't worry, there's nothing to worry about. And I don't know if they're trying to leak it out that maybe we're looking for something. I think their messaging has just been shit, and that's what makes it also very difficult, kind of going back to one of your other points. If this is a hostile or foreign actor, right, in a different nation state that's either demonstrating how easy they are able to do this, or to your point, they're collecting information, intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance, doing, close target reconnaissance type of stuff, using drones, trying to get a better sight at our military and our, just our infrastructure, writ large. Why would you announce that? And why would you be conducting or maybe you're not even trying to be clandestine. Maybe you've got the little red and green, like outboard lights on, so people don't think you're doing something spooky and they just think it's another drone flying out there at night. I mean, thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly there's so many possibilities, so it's hard because even just broaching the topic of UFOs, we're immediately jumping into realms of speculation, right? So I think it's important to just state that, um,
Well, that's what I
I
said
know.
over on Jack over at Black Scout had me on, and when this was just kind of first kind of getting out there, and that was one of my main points is like, yeah, all we can do is speculate right now. There's not enough information and enough data sets coming and data points that we can even, but when your government is, either withholding, malicious, malfeasance or misfeasance, whether they're doing it intentionally or they're just too stupid but they're still doing it, it's still wrong. And, this situation that's been created, and then, for me, this goes someplace because I want to tie this back into some of the, look at how much we've been talking about UFOs over the last couple of years. And then, of course, some bureaucrat, somebody needed to get promoted and they changed it from UFO to UAP and blah, 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 blah. And then, Luis Elizondo and all these guys, and what's his name, Gorsuch or whatever up on Capitol Hill. So there's been a lot of that stuff coming out. And so that's where I'm just kind of coming out. And again, it's just speculation. I've got nothing to build it on, but one of my potentials, as you were going into who are the potential actors, is it could very well be us just doing it to create some type of either energy or, hey, look over there while I'm over here doing this other thing, which is still happening. I mean, this isn't a continuing resolution they're trying to jam. It's more pork barrel bullshit. It's more, how are these people even elected? How have we allowed our country to go down this horrible ruinous direction? So So to me, yeah, there's a bunch of people who might want the me and yous. Oh, look, it's UFOs, it's drones, it's China, it's the new boogeyman, it's Iran. While all this other stuff is still going on in the background, more pardons, more money to, for student loan, for forgiveness, more money for Ukraine, money going over to Africa, but we're not even taking care of people in North Carolina still. So I know that was a long-winded way, but bringing it back over to you, Stephen, it just wouldn't surprise me anymore.
Well, I think that people often consider the nuts and bolts implications of some of these events. Like, are they searching for an unaccounted for or nuclear payload? Are they running some kind of test? Is this a foreign incursion that's taking place, and is it displaying our incompetence? What if the purpose of this is fundamentally and even dominantly a psychological one? In other words, not only the distraction that you mentioned, but it's getting people acclimated to the idea of seeing anomalous things in the sky where they don't belong.
And that's kind of why I brought that up. If you look at the last couple of years with these, House hearings and Senate hearings, and and the Tic Tac and the gimbal videos, and those guys coming out, and and again, people draw their own conclusions, make formulate their own opinions. One or two of those guys are very open. They maybe try to obfuscate it, but they are telling you that everything they say is being cleared by the government. They're going back through their channels and making sure that they're authorized to say what they're about to say. Well, that's not a whistleblower. I mean, that doesn't fall into a whistleblower. You're discussing what the government
What you're
is willing
authorized to say.
yeah, is authorizing you to talk about. That's not a whistleblower. So to me, that is kind of what you're talking about. That was intentional. So if you want to use blue beam or false flags or gray swan, however you want to say it, but that is, I think, and part of the psyops, that is actually conditioning. That is just getting people used to it. Now you see, the gimbal or the Tic Tac video that's on the cover of, I'm just making this up, I don't know if it was, but that becomes more mainstream. Politicians talk about it. We got the Arizona Lights, the Phoenix Lights, excuse me, and their governor. So you're starting to see more and more of that come out. But that also, okay, go ahead.
Well, like imagine, for example, if they had tape of an extraterrestrial biological entity or something like that. Craft is fine too, but I'm just using this as an example. They have video of it and it gets leaked, and they know it's authentic. They know it, but they don't want this out there at this time, at least. Well, what do you do? And I think the answer is you run a psychological operation and you leak more video, and it's fake video, and you use official channels to leak it, even where it's like, oh, look, the whistleblowers are coming out and showing it. And then it's like you have some internet sleuths that within a matter of days to weeks are like, look, this, I could debunk this. Look at here, look at the seam there, or this was
Yeah.
clearly digitally altered here. And then everyone's like, oh yeah, so all this footage was real. Okay. And then that's enough. That's enough. It creates the plausible deniability. It's just it's seeding the you know controlling the narrative is more important than controlling the reality, because the reality becomes the self-fulfilling prophecy, or the narrative becomes the self-fulfilling prophecy, and that becomes reality. So I think it's largely, my opinion is this is probably largely a psychological operation. Otherwise, like, look, here's the fact is, like, this is a big news story, isn't it? Like, why are we talking about it? It's a
Yeah.
huge news story. Everybody's talking about it. And a month from now, no one will be talking about it. But it's been selected. It's been selected at this time. How many people all that are reporting? I forgot how many, like, thousands per year of sightings get reported to, like, MUFON alone. And then there's like a North American one that's not that. I can't remember the name of it, but all these sightings get reported, but nobody takes it seriously in the main channels. Nobody's like, but all of a sudden you see some drones over New Jersey and everybody is losing their minds. I'm not saying it isn't significant. It may very well be, but the point is that the story has been selected to be an attention focal point. And that tells me that they want the story out there because they're pretty good at censoring things. as
Well,
we've
they
seen.
want a story out there, to use that Bongino
That's
kind
right.
of point. Because because it is possible that the whatever the cause of these drones are was something completely different. And then the moment that evil people within the government sought for the opportunity, it was, and because I agree with you, no one's talking about all these other just incredibly, no one's talking about the Russian general that the Ukrainians assassinated, inside Moscow, inside Russia. No one's talking about, again, that student loan debt forgiveness that the Bidens did, or more, all of these other huge issues, or, again, that we're on the brink of World War III. I mean, whatever. Instead, we're talking about this other thing. Now, all I'm trying to say is I also think it's possible that the real cause of it could have been a foreign actor, it could have been, whatever. But the moment our government saw it for the opportunity, and then that's what you have, because then you get the double speak, then you get the psyops, that's the, Mayorkas, there's nothing to see here, everything's under control, but give us more money so we can prevent this in the future. So they're working it into what they want it now to be, the story that they want to keep people focused on.
Sometimes what you don't say is more important than what you do say. Just the implications that that people will run with. So I look at things like that from that vantage point. I think that I think disclosure is coming. I think that's pretty clear, and I think that many people have been desiring it for a long time. They've been seeding UFO culture into our media for decades, since the really late 40s. It's been, I guess, post World War II. I mean, there's been
What was it?
sighting. I'm talking about the media. And so there's already been a conscious acclamation to the idea of cohabiting with extraterrestrials. Um, and it was mocked a lot for a very long time, but slowly but surely, more and more people become open to it. And I think that what the goal is with disclosure, not the only goal, but a chief goal of it, is to ensure that when a significant enough level of disclosure occurs, when it transpires, that the population will, in their mind, they'll frame it from the point of view, from the point of observation, which benefits the system. And we'll see that come about. And later we could talk about that, and I could give some examples of what that means. But I think that's what we're going to see.
All right. Well, here, let me just share one thing here real quickly. Now, Blackbeard had sent this to me over in our chat. Actually, I can't remember if that was a private message or if that was in the gear chat.
I
But let me
sent you
just,
privately, but it's
was that okay? All right. Well, but I might repost it over in the gear chat side because it's interesting. And anyway, so I'm going to bring up this. And as always, now I can't see you. Let me come back over here. Okay, I'm going to do full screen on this. All right, so this is over on Twitter. This is an account called Shadow of Ezra. This Joe Biden sniffing a kid. But here's what we wanted to talk about. I'm not going to play this whole interview. I don't know if you want to speak to this a little bit, Stephen. I'm just going to kind of show it. But I mean, so if you don't know who Stephen Greer is, I mean, in the whole UFO world, he's been around for a while. He's actually put out some really good content. I've actually enjoyed some of his films. But if I play this all the way through, as you can see, the title has issued a chilling warning claiming a major government false flag operation is imminent, designed to sow chaos, conceal the truth. If you're not on Twitter, get on Twitter. Follow us, by the way, Centerline Systems. But the Shadow of Ezra, and I'll probably put that up in the CLS gear chat a little bit later too. But what's interesting about that to me, Blackbeard, when he goes and he's breaking it down, he's very specific, talking like, in a very short window, this is what's gonna happen. This is
30
break
days
that.
is what he said
Yeah.
prior to the election. Now, obviously, we'll see if that comes about. I have very mixed feelings about Dr. Greer. We have a very, not that I know him, it's not like I'm a colleague of his or anything, but he he really views the UFO phenomenon through a very positive lens,
Yeah.
and I view it through a very negative lens. And think I have good reasons for doing that. But with that said, like, the guy is closer to the centers of power certainly than I am, and I don't doubt that he has been in communication with them now. What he was implying in that video was not that there was going to be an actual alien invasion, but rather this is kind of like prep work for a fake alien invasion.
Yeah.
And there's been a while, they've often I'm sure you're familiar with this, and probably much of the audience is, but they've spoken about Ronald Reagan's one of his speeches where he discusses, I sometimes wonder if we were facing an alien threat from another world. And it's clearly in the context given as a hypothetical, right? Just like if there was an outside force, we would unify, but since there is no outside force, we're fighting amongst ourselves. Well, but the point is still well taken, and it's one step in what a lot of people have expected towards a further integration of the homogeneous global, full spectrum dominant system that's been employed for a long time uh, throughout the world. If there's any countries that are free of its grasp, it's only to a greater or lesser extent, but its tentacles are in pretty much everything. But it would be another unifying step, a great unifying step, um, and toward internationalism rather than this rise of nationalism that we've been seeing. So,
And I
yeah,
don't know if he's watching right now. He can't come on, but well, maybe if you are watching, come on. But our friend from Fog Firearms, Blake, he and I talked about that. And when again, it's all speculation about the drones, but to kind of what you're alluding to and implying right there is, there clearly are groups and individuals who have great influence and great wealth. I personally believe those are the front men. The real power, we don't even know who those people are. And power at that level isn't necessarily measured in money. It's about ability and creating and shifting and shaping. And if you look into a lot of these organizations, you have a lot of people who aren't afraid to talk about depopulation and one world governments and governance and issues and comments along those lines. I think we've entered into an era, societally speaking, where it wouldn't be outside the realm of possibility for whatever that League of Shadows really is to be also doing its own thing off on the side, and trying to create and shape an environment in which more people want more government control, and that leads to this or it leads to that. I mean, look, we could sit there and talk about COVID all day long, for how that was manipulated and used, by people in power for evil reasons. So, I mean, is it not even, they're not going to give up. They're not going to go quietly into the dark, ha ha ha, so to speak. So is it not even possible that you fall into a little bit of that world and that realm for what's going on here? I mean, because, again, who's really controlling this technology? Back to what you just kind of said, and Reagan, but if you go all the way back, Truman, Eisenhower, Eisenhower maybe specifically, where he's warning against the military industrial complex. There's all kinds of rumors, whether he had meetings, he made some demands, and then there, the same thing with Truman, and that little period is where if something did happen, it seems like that was kind of a significant period in the whole UFO kind of history as far as, America and our government is concerned. But it also is that point in time where the wheels started coming off and the special interests and the, certain power bases were able to take control of that and keep it outside, because, from what we understand, there's hasn't been a president yet who's actually been able to, it's like, nope, sorry, sir, you're the commander in chief, but you don't have a need to know. And, all that kind of bullshit. And apparently Eisenhower, had to make a threat, because that's what he was being met with. But you kind of see where I'm going. Can you grab that and run with that a little bit?
well, I'm just looking at some of my notes here, and when it comes to the idea of like what's behind the technology, I think that's a good place to go, because the drones are okay. I'm not super interested in it, to be honest with you. I'm more interested in the idea of like 30 days and this will happen. Look, I didn't put that number out. He put that number out. So you
Yeah.
need to own a prediction like that. And if nothing happens, then that should hurt his credibility. Just being real with you,
Hey,
you
look,
know.
and I'll throw myself under that bus. I think, well, except I'm not making a prediction. I'm just saying that between now and January 20th, the inauguration, I've been saying this since the election, it's going to be a very, very dangerous and tumultuous time.
Mm.
I can't really, I'm not predicting a false flag like Greer's, but I'm saying the probability of something wicked this way comes is pretty freaking high during that same kind of window. So I don't know if there's a weird overlap there, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's important to understand, like, as far as what's behind some of this technology. We can start a little more nuts and bolts and kind of work our way where it inevitably goes, which is towards the more woo end of it. Woo! Do it, Mark.
I'm eating an apple right now. I can't.
So anyway, like Bob Lazar is
Woo!
famous
There we
now
go.
because, yeah, there we go, because he was on Joe Rogan. But I mean, in the late 80s, early 90s, he was coming out because he had been allegedly reverse engineering extraterrestrial craft at the S4 facility in Groom Lake, which I believe is just south of Area 51. And that's what made Area 51 famous. Um, and he said, things that are pretty standard, which is to say the interior configuration of the craft was designed for much smaller humanoid beings. And so you look at that and it's like, well, or you look at the classical depictions of these entities. Now, some of them talk about changing form, and there is variance in the forms that people have talked about seeing. But so, I think we should look to it at the words that are being used. So, for example, extraterrestrial. So, terrestrial means of the earth, right? Like terra firma is earth, and then extra means beyond or above. So anything that is from beyond the Earth is technically an extraterrestrial. So I think we should consider that. And
And your implication there, if I can kind of assume, you're also talking about transdimensional as well.
that's right.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
That's
I kind
right.
of thought that's what you were kind of laying down. All right. Continue. Sorry.
That's part of the hypothesis that was made popular by Jacques Vallée, who incidentally was one of the people instrumental in the creation of ARPANET, which was the precursor to the internet. He's a Frenchman that worked out of California, I think for the Stanford Research Institute. I'm somebody have to check me on that, but I think that's what it was. But he wrote a book called Passport to Magonia and Messengers of Deception, are probably his two most well-known novels. And yeah, that's getting in the weeds a bit more, but I guess all that to say is, like, because people also speculate, like, is this our craft? So I sent Redbeard some information on a guy who's very interested in the development of zero point technology and scalar technology, because Redbeard's interested in that. So it would be cool if he could come on. But regardless, that whole thing is apparently tied into the extraterrestrial phenomenon. But people wonder, well, okay, so if we reverse engineered extraterrestrial craft, or if that's just a cover story and there are no extraterrestrials, how much of this is hidden tech? And that's ours, that is our technology. And I would just say that there's no doubt that certain elements of humanity have had access to that technology for quite some time. But for example, the existence of anti-gravitic propulsion, um, to travel through space-time by warping space-time, is a leapfrog in technological development over how do I make a better rocket. So you have a gentleman like Elon Musk that's, how do I put this? I obsessing, maybe, I don't know, but he is very focused. He's very focused and driven on the idea of making better rocketry, which is I burn something out the butt end of a vessel, and that explosion propels me forward through space and time. But what Bob Lazar was talking about was using a stable version of element 115, which allegedly can't, no one's been able to synthesize a atomically stable version of that, but he claimed that's what it was, and that you were able to bend space-time. And so essentially you become a time traveler, and it's not that you are moving through space, but you're drawing space to you, if that makes sense. So it's really the opposite of propulsion in many ways. And there was a gentleman named Stan Deo who alleges that he was recruited by Dr. Edward Teller. I believe it was somewhere out of Texas, and brought over to the Pine Gap facility in Utah back in the 70s to work on the reverse engineering of extraterrestrial craft, along with the development of free energy or 0 point energy that comes from fluctuations in the quantum vacuum. And he said that they were successful in doing that. And people, so it kind of, if that is the case, it does render the idea of rocket propulsion rather moot. And it makes you wonder, about things like NASA, for example. And obviously, it doesn't seem to have done much since the 1960s, depending on where you land on the reality of that. But even so, I don't know. It raises a lot of questions. I happen to think it's probably the case. As I understand it, there have also been orb sightings, along with these drones, which is
Yeah.
kind of interesting. With the orb thing, that can go back again to the idea, somehow. And I'm no expert on any of this, and certainly not on like anti-gravitic propulsion. I don't know that there's anybody that could make that claim. Maybe the people that are actually reverse engineering it, but I have a feeling they're under very strict NDAs.
Yeah.
Um, but as I understand it, it creates like some kind of plasma around the vehicle that emits light, such that the UFO craft themselves will glow, which of course would be especially noticeable at night, and you could easily be mistaken for an orb. However, there are orbs which are, people debate on exactly what those are. I think that they land in more of what people would traditionally look at as like a spirit realm kind of being. And there's a long history to those as well. In the UK folklore, they were known as will-o'-the-wisps. And usually they were a very bad sign, actually, if you saw them. So I have friends who've seen them. I've not seen them myself. Um, so yeah, the other thing to consider is that, and this is where I butt heads with some people in the UFO community. Not that I'm a part of that. I just have an interest in it. I don't know what it takes to be a card carrying member of that community or what constitutes its boundaries, but here we are. But a lot of them will say, look, the extraterrestrials are purely extraterrestrial in the sense that these are something which, like Richard Dawkins alluded to, were a physical flesh and blood being which came about by some evolutionary means on another planet. Or maybe they were made by a deity, but they're still flesh and blood. And I have my own thoughts on that. Maybe we'll get into that. But I will say that I think it's interesting, for example, that you have guys like Andrea Puharich. I know I'm butchering that name. And one of the, and Gene Roddenberry actually went out to the East Coast and got in contact with a group known for channeling what were called the Nine, which I think is very interesting because the nine is the number of planets, which have been tied to celestial. They are literally celestial beings, but they've been tied to like the idea of they're named for the gods and so forth. And in varying mythologies, you'll see it fluctuate between 9 and 7 often, but 9 is a very consistent number in these tales. And there was if you go into groups like Theosophy, they talk about the ascended masters. That was and all of these things kind of meld into UFO cults and UFO religions. But they always talk about like this hierarchy, which ultimately transcends the physical plane and is responsible for administering the spiritual evolution of humanity and the systems of the world. And I don't know. It's something to think about. A Star Trek is a journey through the stars, and the stars were the gods in the ancient world. So what are we dealing with? In the Star Wars, if the stars were the gods of the ancient world, then what are the Star Wars? Just things I think about.
Well, and just kind of going back to Will o' the Wisp and, an orb and the technology, if we can, if Bob Lazar is telling the truth and, if this really exists and if that, again, whether it's 0 point or anti-gravitic, but, again, those comments are out there in the UFO world, like, and this is why we see them glow and this is why, they have that shape or this is what they look like. And if you just go back just even a few hundred years or 1,000 years ago, whatever, just, within recent history of man, all of that would be interpreted. You would see a light and you would either interpret it in, angelic or the gods, like you say. So that's where I think a lot of that, I don't think some of this is exclusive. I think a lot of this is actually more of we're just human beings at different evolutionary stages trying to interpret what, advanced tech that with our caveman brains still, type of thing, that technology, should it exist? Well, for starters, if it does exist and if people are withholding it, I guess I'm sure there'd be somebody out there like, well, but if this ever got in the hands of governments, they'd use it for war. Welcome to planet Earth. I mean, so, maybe our focus should be on space exploration and solving crime and famine and all that stuff. And if there's technology out there that can make the world a better place for every human being, you're kind of a bag of Richards, what is it? A satchel of Richards if you're not sharing that. And if you're using it for, your own evil, nefarious, we know best because we're the rich or the elite or the scientist community or whatever it is. And I just, so again, bringing it all the way back full circle. And even I just realized, I know this is going to sound stupid, but into those people, if that's what's happening, it's not angelic and it's not, but there's probably some weird spiritual thing going through their head where they think they're the ones who are going to bring about a bright new shining future.
For sure. In fact, if you read the literature, or if you happen to know any abductees, which I have and do, but a very common theme that they'll talk about is say what you just said, so I can launch off that
Well,
again.
just how you could, interpret some things, that are actually just physical and scientific as spiritual, or even when you start going down this road, if we're going to start talking nefarious, like we captured this technology and now we, the League of Shadows, have it. Even those weirdos might be thinking and
Got it.
Yeah.
So UFO cults abductees will often get messages that are relating to some kind of apocalyptic event. They'll even give precise dates, often not entirely, but frequently through channeling sessions, which, that's an occult practice. I mean, the truth is you don't know what you're talking to. So, I mean, play with fire at your own risk is all I would say. But so they get these messages. There was I was reading a book on persuasion by a psychologist from some university in Arizona. Yeah, and he went over a whole case study of this UFO cult from Chicago, where the people believed that they were channeling information, I think through a radio actually, but they were channeling information from extraterrestrials who were telling them that they were going to be like lifted from the earth, like removed from the earth just prior to an apocalyptic event. It gave them the day. At midnight, they were all to wait. I mean, think of how many cults have some kind of similar theme, right? It's we drink the Kool-Aid and we'll get on the spaceship as the comet passes,
Yep.
So they all waited there, and then midnight came and midnight went, and nothing happened. So there's a common in the apocalyptic kind of motifs that are communicated. I mean, what does that evoke but the idea of, I mean, is there a religion that doesn't have some kind of eschatological idea? Even if you go to the Eastern side, which is, supposedly less linear, there's it you're still going through the cycles of the ages that you're in, and at the transition point there's great change, usually cataclysmic. So maybe not always, but I'm just saying that there's that kind of messaging that comes through, or they'll often come through with spiritual messaging or messaging about the planet. But that's a whole other topic that goes quite a bit deeper than that, because
Well, and
yeah.
just before you go any deeper on that, and there's some people on the internet, again, you have fun. ScrewTube, it's ScrewTube and it's censorship and it whatever, but there still is some really good content out there. And then to your point, Blackbeard, there are people who are talking about, well, so here are the Y files, and I'll pull them up so people can see what that looks like. But I think he's got an episode where we're talking about, and I think he may have started off with something specific to Project Bluebeam, but the ultimate goal, is to have, this 3D technology, this new technology, and to employ that, and then to have all these religious figures then coming and combining into one figure, and that's the real, so So I don't think anything you're saying is outside of the realm of, I mean, I think that's got to be on the table as part of the discussion, because I mean, you know, if this plan exists, and if these, you know, the League of Shadows, this evil power, well, they're going to use some version of spirituality as an actual weapon to get people to go along with their actual program. So, I mean, that's some diabolical, philosophical, you know, spiritual shit right there.
It is all of those things, and you get variances in the messaging. I kind of wanted to talk a little bit. You know, I've already
Hey, before we go any
explained.
further, I
Yeah,
just, you know, and again, normally we don't do the comments over here, but there's been some interesting ones. I don't know if you've seen it. I think before we move forward, you know, Paul has asked about localized EMPs for self-protection. He's saying he thinks we saw maybe some evidence of those possibilities. Gargoyle Graphics, haven't seen you before. Welcome to the show. I don't know if you can see that, Stephen. I don't know how much of that we want to address, but everybody should kind of look at it. I have not heard of the Whisk Arrow, but you know, an autonomous vertical takeoff and landing, you know, electronic, you know, type of thing. That's kind of interesting. I think, you know, Gargoyle Graphics, I don't want to speak for you, but it kind of seems from your comments that this is private, that went over to Boeing. You know, this is US made, it's commercial, went over to Boeing. You know, who knows how much more that tech has progressed since then. And now it's probably over in the Skunk Works side. That, you know, and that's kind of the deal, you know, and now it's in that black bag, or that, you know, special access side. And then we've got Your World Is Over. So normally we don't really read the questions over here, just to kind of let you know that. But the FAA, but I wanted to address that and let Stephen kind of talk about it too. I mean, this is the thing that has bothered me as well. If, you know, because they're trying to downplay and say that these are commercial drones by commercial, you know, me and you operators. Well, last I checked, I didn't see any, like, you know, drones like of that nature over
I
on the
can answer that
DJI
question
website.
easily and succinctly. Okay. Occam's razor, all things being
Yeah.
equal, the simplest solution tends to be the correct one. Why haven't they shot them down? Because they want them there, obviously.
Well, that's what I think. I mean, they either want them there or they cannot do anything about it, which isn't the same thing, but it's kind of the
Do
same
you
thing.
think that they can't shoot those down?
No, I'm well, again, unless that really does have some new tech that we don't know about. But, you know, again, there's been some reports that these things are very hard to photograph or film, you know, so maybe they do have some of their own, you know,
Then how do we know about it? How do we have photograph and film of it?
well, that's it, you know, but
They want them there,
well, okay, but
obviously.
hang on, but those reports have been stated that, well, and then there's even, you know, quote unquote reports. So I'm just throwing this in there because I think it adds to your argument, you know, that these vehicles can even, you know, like, you know, have a very focused and singular type of EMP type of effect, or some type of weapon that can, you know, stop electronics and turn off vehicles. So all I'm trying to say, I think this feeds into, has that been proven? No, this is just what people have been saying, right? So, well,
Let me
you
tell you
know,
something. Ben Rich of Lockheed Martin Skunk Works has said that we have already had the technology to take ET home.
yeah, to take them
Right?
home.
He's
Yep.
famous having said that. So we have anti-gravitic propulsion and we have 0 point energy. We're warping space-time, but we can't shoot down drones that use propellers. Yes, we can. These are black projects that we're talking about here. I'm talking about occulted technology. I'm not talking about what you see. We're still using there. It's going away, but we're still having human pilots fly planes today. They've kept this technology hidden. There was, you know, there's a report by Dr. Mark Skidmore of Michigan State University where he talked about the fact that the Pentagon has not been, not only has it not passed its audits, it has not been able to
Yeah.
account for $23 trillion in funds. And now the number is actually higher than that. That was an old number. And what they're doing is they're taking this money and they are funding the development of a breakaway civilization. That's
Okay,
what's
hold it right.
happening.
No, okay, hold it right there. That's a nice fork in the road, and I want to get back to that fork. So, but just bringing it back to kind of like some of the chat and the commentary. Again, I think we're saying the same thing. I personally, believe, yes, we have all, within, unless these drones, because you notice that Stephen and I didn't start talking and calling these things UFOs or UAPs. I think it's, I think it kind of is pretty clear that these are Terran, or earthly based produced, human vehicles, devices, pieces of equipment. Now, maybe they do have some advanced tech on there that makes them really difficult, to lock on or whatever. But that's not the same thing with a guy down on the ground, just pointing a regular, AR or, any other type of not what am I trying to say? Just a regular, like rifle, black powder, using that type of technology. I'm not talking laser beams. Yeah, this ability we should have. So either there is something about him we don't know, which is, I think it's a slim possibility, but still a possibility. Or Stephen, we're just not willing to do it because
you're supposed to see these drones. The point is to see the drones. That's the point. It's exactly right. It's like if you didn't want to see them, they wouldn't have lights. Yes, because you're meant to see them. This is a psychological operation that's taking place. And I think it's obvious that that's happening. And that's the first thing that I started with.
Well, so, and I think that's just it. I mean, it's the ender obvious. So, again, people talking about the lights. If you were doing something clandestine, why would you have the lights on? Well, I mean, a true clandestine,
why would you even let it enter the newspaper?
Well, hang on, let me just finish. But when you're running clandestine operations, I mean, some of the things you might be trying to accomplish is just simply confusion. And the simple fact that you're flying a drone in America where all drones flown would have those lights on. Well, why would you do something different? You're not actually being clandestine at that point. You're drawing attention to yourself. I think the goal is to either mix in, cause confusion, and sow distrust, and and have these type of things where everybody's pissed off at the government because the government doesn't have any answers. I think the government has all the answers and is just not willing to share them with us, is what it is.
Yeah.
Well, maybe they aren't willing to share them because they, again, at some level.
Listen, they're not sharing it because if they're going to share the reason, it defeats the purpose, right? Like how many things do they do that you're never privy to? Look at the kind of control of censorship of information that they were able to have during the events of COVID. And it's like, you think that because Elon Musk took over Twitter, that's gone away? The government created the internet. That was a government project that came out of DARPA. The whole thing was always meant to be a surveillance grid. That was its purpose. It's a world wide web. It's the internet.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, but again, and we posited some theories for why this may be that they want you to know. It's preparing people psychologically for the event of noticing unnatural, unidentified phenomenon in the sky in large numbers without explanation. Because, well, what did Stephen Greer talk about, right? That's one possibility. But the point is that if they didn't want to be seen, they wouldn't be seen. And if you think that the government is, concerned about national boundaries, you're several decades behind. There is no United States. There is no Europe. These are games that are played on a higher level than that. We're talking about internationalism. We're talking about the progression of civilization.
Yeah, and if you don't join our little gang or whatever, if you want to go out there and still remain an independent sovereign nation, it really is.
There's no
it's
such
like
thing as an independent sovereign nation.
That's what I'm trying to get at. It's like a mafia. You're going to join us and be part of whether it's NATO, whatever it is, or or we're going to overthrow your country, or you're just fucked, or whatever. Like, it's becoming very difficult for a country just to be out there and say, why can't I sell some products to you guys and some products to you guys, and then you guys just leave me out? If you guys get in a tussle, that's between you two. Fuck, like, I'm just here to make some money, man.
Yeah. I've always felt that the United States, since its symbol is the phoenix, I've always assumed that the cryptocracy that's in control of it, that they always plan to bring down the United States to birth something new from its ashes. I mean, that's the story of the phoenix. So, a lot of people think it's the eagle. It's actually the phoenix is the symbol of the United States. But again, this like look at the speech from Network. It's pretty dead on. It's like everything, when you don't control your own money supply, you don't have a sovereign nation. Don't tell me that you do. You don't. When you have borders that are this porous, where anyone and everyone can come in, and they're uh, supplied with finances to stay here, you're going to tell me that you have an independent nation? There is no such thing as the United States. The United States exists in name only, very obviously so. I know that's very black pilled, but that's apparently where people want to go. But that's the truth of it.
Well, I mean, look, and and look, just let the conversation go wherever it wants to go. We're talking about UFOs, the drones, but just even what we're getting at right there. I mean, that's just another like, we can't have a conversation about UFOs without somehow mentioning false flags, Project Blue Beam, reverse engineering. Where is all that engineering going? Something I was saying, I don't think I was saying it to you, Blackbeard. I think I was saying it to Redbeard, or maybe it was me and you talking the other day. But if you think of, so I guess maybe there's two examples. Our most advanced technology eventually makes its debut on the battlefield, and we see it, whether it's the F-111, the F-1, the B-2, or correction, the F-117, the B-2 bomber, the stealth technology, whatever the thing is, we eventually display it in the theater, the war, the theater of combat. It eventually finds its way, and that technology is out there. What have we not seen to date? We've never seen any zero point energy, anti-grav. We haven't seen any of that stuff ever be used in combat. So, and look, there's all kinds of, like, this doesn't mean one thing or the other, because maybe combat has never gotten to the point where we were literally about to like die and lose as a nation. Like, and I don't mean just lose and we, lose Hawaii. I don't mean it that way. I mean like lose and we all die. And maybe this technology is so advanced and we only have limited amounts of it that we're keeping it for that, that one moment. And I can kind of see you smirking right there, Blackbeard. Do you think that's how our politicians would view things? Like, would they keep that as an ace in a hole for the last ditch moment? I don't think so.
I don't know, it's hard to, you're always in the realm of speculation because I can't read their minds. I just know like what people have written about regarding like the plans for things. So, like I said, I'm more interested in the UFOs than I am in the drone situation. It's just not particularly interesting to me, to be honest with you. I know it's very popular right now, but I don't think it's not UFOs really. I mean, it is by the technical definition. They are unidentified flying objects, or it's
Yeah.
unidentified aerial phenomenon. But yeah, I'm more interested in like the woo stuff.
Well, okay.
Yeah.
So let's kind of maybe just like take that as a segue over there then. So look, at the end of the day, anything regarding these drones is really just nothing more than speculation. I mean, and maybe some people think they've got a more informed opinion of it than others. Again, you do you, right? That's great. Greer, back to that, that better than or Shadow of Ezra post over on Twitter, that interview Dr. Greer did. He seems pretty adamant that he knows what's going on. And he's been in that world for a long time, and he's rubbed elbows with people that none of us have probably ever rubbed elbows with. So, is there something to be said for that? Maybe, maybe not. Should we at least, kind of just keep an eye on things and raise our eyebrows? And, but at the end of the day, no matter what happens, like even Trump just came out and just said, look, our military knows exactly what this is. He basically said this administration knows exactly what's going on, and he doesn't understand why in the fuck they're not talking about it. Now, I don't know if that means he's got a special briefing. He's still just the incoming. He doesn't have any executive powers until Inauguration Day. So, is that speculation? Is it people in the military and within other facets of the government already talking to him so he can maybe try to calm this down or prevent, a potential war? I mean, I just don't know. All of this would be speculation. But what I do know is that if the truth ever gets out, it's just not going to be good. I mean, people are either going to get fired from their jobs, or they should be, fucking criminally liable. And if they were in government or in our military, I mean, this is just a shit show all around, as we kind of segue into UAPs, right?
I have to agree with you. It is a bit of a conundrum, isn't it? But I leave things in God's hands, and I'm at peace with that. But I am interested in this phenomenon because of what it touches on, even from a theological perspective, and not just in like the traditional religions of the West, but in some more esoteric aspects of it too. It seems to connect. Billy Meyer was a very famous contactee, took very detailed photographs of saucer, and claimed to be in contact with, I think it was the Pleiadians, he said.
Yeah.
Did they come from
Subaru,
Pleiades?
the Subaru symbol.
Yeah.
That's the Pleiades in the Subaru. I'm pretty sure that's
Yeah.
I think that's the constellation in Subarus, the Pleiades. Hey, but just on that note though, look, there's controversy around all these things. So, when people come in and just weigh in with, 100% certainty it's this or it's that, I get a little skeptical. I think we should take a lot of things with a grain of salt and, again, we do our own research. But, his is a very interesting story, I guess, is what I'm trying to get to. If it's true, wow. How much of it is maybe the result of something else? I think that's been debated. I think there's some people who've even claimed to have debunked some of his stuff, but on the other hand,
that's right.
Yeah. So,
but I thought it was interesting that, for example, he said that the alien that he came into contact looked like a human, and its name was Semyaza. Okay, Semjase is how he spelled it. But that's very clearly Samyaza, right? Which was like one of the leaders of the fallen angels, according to intertestamental period Jewish folklore. That came down and touched down on Mount Hermon. From the book of First Enoch, it talks about them teaching various technologies to humanity, which is interesting because you now have in a modern mythos, you have a man like Bob Lazar allegedly reverse engineering craft. Again, I say allegedly because I don't know. I wasn't there. We've all heard the stories. It doesn't mean it's true. I don't know. But it's just interesting because, Shem Yaza too, it means one who has beheld the name. So kind of interesting.
Hey, just how about that right there? Let's kind of that would be a fun thing real quickly. Just, we've already kind of given Dr. Greer a little bit of a shout out, but what about Bob Lazar? What do you think of? I think there was some people who've kind of glommed onto him a little bit. There's some people will point out some weird things. We're all weird. We all got something weird in our lives that, if it came to light, people would be like, what's wrong with you? You like a certain type of tuna fish or whatever it is, what I'm saying? So yeah, I know he had some issues or whatever the case is, but I mean, who wouldn't maybe after if it was true, being there, seeing that, being involved in it, and then having the courage or the audacity or the balls or the stupidity to go and start to talk to, I think that was that Noor?
Yeah.
It was Noor, right? Yeah. Coast to Coast Radio, but
it was George Knapp it
was George Knapp. Yeah. That's who it was. Yeah. He reached out to George Knapp, but that probably definitely would have some, negative consequences for you going forward after that moment. What are your thoughts on Bob Lazar?
Well,
if I can put you on the spot,
you can. I want to think about what I want to say. I have my reasons for thinking that he's telling the truth, and I'll just leave it at that.
Well, I was going to try to give you a note, instead of because I don't want this to be, I'm not talking about Bob Lazar, the man, the individual. I'm talking more about the claims, the assertions, and if what he says is real, what are the implications of that? It's more that part of the story.
One of the most important things that he said, which he didn't even know what it meant, and I think I know what it meant. But he said that in the documents that the aliens referred to human beings as containers. And I think I know what that means.
From food or energy source,
Um,
or something different to you?
yeah. Yeah, the thing with the alien stuff is it can get kind of dark pretty fast, actually. And I didn't come to it because it was like a happy thing. So I do have an interest in it, but it's mostly because I think it's important. But I think that the phenomenon overall is not a good thing for our species.
What do you mean? Flesh that out. It's not a good thing. Are you implying that if this is real, there's a dangerous or an evil side to it that we just haven't seen?
People have seen it, but it isn't very disclosed, and I think that's part of what the disclosure is about, and that's some of what I mean when I say that they're trying to control the lens through which you perceive it as the disclosure continues to take place. They want to frame, I think they want to frame it in a very particular way, and I don't think it's a way that really serves us.
Well, the one thing that's always, been kind of interesting to me is you hear a lot of people say, "Hey, look, if the aliens were malicious, if they meant us, harm, they already would have done it," type of thing. Well, I mean, I mean, like, based on what? That you're just saying something. What is your evidence to back up that claim? Whereas my counter is, if this is true, and if abductions, and if all this has happened, that shows malign intent. You are abducting people against their will, and then, according to a lot of these people, having and running experiments on them, or implanting things into their body, or impregnating, so if we go down that realm and these things are true, what? So they're just like, they're just the nicer evil scientists, like they're the island of Dr. Moreau. They only want to do some evil experiments, but they're not here to wipe us out.
If if the UFO phenomenon is purely dealing with biological entities, if that's all it is just space, people from another planet, there's certain questions you have to ask yourself. Say that they did evolve on some other planet, right? In which, what's the probability that the environment would be such? Look at the variety of form on this planet, but they all look human.
Well, but there's some people who try to make those arguments from a, again, I don't know how much real science you can really apply to this conversation, but, just looking at, like, what, if you look at different ecospheres, what would be the prominent style of life form that you would most anticipate, and this is why, so just for anybody who's interested, David Brin, I really enjoy his science fiction. And David Brin has a 6-book series called The Uplift Wars. But it's actually, like, the first 3 books are The Uplift Wars, and then the second 3 books are called something different, but it's still that whole saga. But in the universe that he's created, and Sundiver Down is part of that too, and that's the first book, kind of a little bit of a different theme. But to your point, like, he is exploring, in his science fiction world, a 5 universe kind of thing, where species from all these different planets and all these different galaxies, or I'm sorry, 5 galaxies. And, and you do have these variations in creatures, but you do seem to have some similarities, right? Like creatures that don't have the ability to grasp, manipulate, like some type of digits, really aren't going up on the evolutionary scale. Everybody's got some type of optical input sensor, because you got to see things, you've got to interpret the world around you. So to your point, when we're sitting here talking about potential alien life, like, I think there's people who've tried to look at it, and we do find arguments that, bipedal, or again, eyes, auditory, taking in information, whether it's visual or auditory, some way to communicate, blah, blah, blah. I mean, I think these are just some kind of the prerequisites that you're going to get out of intelligent life, though, Stephen.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's possible. I just think, if you look at something like cosmic horror, then the idea of something totally other makes more sense to me. Again, you've got things like, look at what we find in the deep sea. That's a completely
Yeah.
different environment and how variant that is from our own experience. But people say they're looking at other human faces in this, not always, but some of them.
Well, but now, and I'm not making any excuses here, but just again, when you look at something that you've never seen before and you can't even comprehend, what do we all try to do? We all try to find something that's normal.
Relatable.
Yep.
It's true. It could be an anthropomorphization, and then you consider that most of the testimonies will tell you that the beings are telepathic, and so if they can put thoughts into your head, what's to say they can't create visual imagery that'll distort your perception of what's happening? So, yeah, I mean, it's why it's woo, right? It's why it's speculation. It's because it's out there on the fringe of even perception. The whole subject itself is liminal, and
yeah, but woo
yeah.
isn't speculation, by the way. Woo is an exclamation of joy, camaraderie, and kick-assness. There's nothing speculative about the woo. Woo! Like, see, did that sound speculative to you?
A little bit.
Did it really?
No, no.
All right.
Yeah.
Where do you guys want? And somebody leave a comment if you want us to go in a slightly different direction. I'm not sure if we're going to get Better Call Paul. I mean, he sent me a text. He's still doing some stuff. He's listening to us right now. He's going to try to come on. And when he does that, I think, that's when we might go over towards, look at Blackbeard. Seriously, man. Yawning.
It's just, I did not get good sleep last night.
Well, no, but this past my bedtime, I'm old and broken, dude. I can't be seeing that right now. But but no, if you guys got us something that you want us to bring up, but otherwise, Blackbeard, I kind of want to just move it, over. I do want to give a shout out for just 2 channels. I'm just going to show those real quick. I think I kind of mentioned this. These are channels I like. I mean, I seriously do enjoy the products that these guys put out. Y Files is informative. I'm sure you guys have probably heard him. He's become pretty big over the last couple of years, and I'm just kind of going down his playlist. You can kind of see what his logo looks like, and and some of the topics he talks about. I think he does a pretty fair job of being neutral. He's definitely debunked a lot of stuff, and then he'll be the first to say, but this time I couldn't do it, or this really got me interesting, like the moon. He's got a couple good episodes about the moon and just how weird the moon is. And that's one of his things right there, is just I thought this was going to be an open and shut. Of course we went to the moon, and then I got over here and I'm like, man, there's lots of things about the moon that's really interesting. So I like his content. And then I'll do the last one here is the Lore Lodge. A slightly different style, but a very intelligent young man. Definitely has like a linguistic and what is it, Blackbeard? Study of tribes, the study of transitory humanity, whatever. Anyway, this guy's got a background. He's smart, and I like some of the stories he tells. And so what we're kind of getting at, I just got the time Teddy Roosevelt allegedly fought Bigfoot. I actually haven't seen that one yet. I think I might have to go and watch that episode because that's a really interesting story right there. Teddy Roosevelt, is he just writing his own little idea of fiction, or is he telling the story that was recounted to him, or that he had heard around campfires out on hunting trips, when he was a boy, that were being passed down? So pretty interesting stuff. How about we just throw it in there right there? Cryptids. What are your thoughts, cryptids?
I think that you got a lot of camps on those kind of things. It's like crypt, the root for crypt, like when you die, they put you in a crypt. And when you try and hide information, you say it's encrypted. So it means hidden,
Yeah.
And so cryptozoology is a hidden animal or an undiscovered animal. People will say. And thing with these is again, it's like with the UFO, for people that say it's purely a material phenomenon. It's like, why is the occult always involved with it then? What what do I mean by that? Well, here's an example of a cryptid. You have Loch Ness, right? The Loch Ness monster. Is that real? I have no idea. But I know that Aleister Crowley has a mansion right on Loch Ness. Okay. I know that people see Sasquatch with greater frequency in the vicinity of UFO sightings. Why would that be? And other cryptids, you look at like the famous, Skinwalker ranches are famous now. They see cryptids there and they see UFOs there. So is this part of some kind of holistic phenomenon?
Well, and they also claim to see portals and
Yeah,
interdimensional rifts, things of that
yeah,
nature.
yeah.
So that's a
So,
very interesting thing. And that's the one about Bigfoot. Because again, purely speculation. I have no idea. Is it, an ancient, primate species that's managed to survive? Everybody's talked about that. I don't need to necessarily bore people with that, but I do like it's interesting though, because they don't have to be the same. They could be separate. It could be its own species that's managed to stay alive. And there's something about, and then there's UFOs, which are something completely different, but maybe UFOs can see Bigfoot and maybe they like talking to those guys. Like, we don't really know, right? I mean, it could be some dimensional thing. Like, there's all kinds of possibilities. I just think it's pretty fascinating shit, though, no matter what it is. Like, why do we see this correlation? Is it because people who are inclined to think they see Bigfoot are also inclined to think they see a UFO? Is there some correlation there? I'm not sure.
well, again, one possibility is that it's somehow part of the same expressions of the same phenomenon. And another could be the observer. Like you were mentioning, it could be people that are more sensitive to these kind of things. I've never seen a Sasquatch. I know people that have personally that I trust. I know people who are abductees personally. And I know they're not liars. And I've had supernatural encounters myself, but to my knowledge, not with anything like that. And I'm actually rather grateful for that. But yeah, I mean, it's definitely fringe territory, but the thing I think that makes it interesting is that we live in a time that has demystified everything. It's taken the mystery, literally demystified. Like, it's taken the mystery from everything. There is no enchantment in the world anymore. I mean, it's there, but the culture at large has stolen it, and it's given us really poor substitutes for it. And I think the most grievous aspect of that is that it's never been true to begin with. That is to say that the world isn't mystical, it's profoundly mystical. And it's mystical in really great ways, and it's mystical in really horrifying ways. And the UFO phenomenon bridges both of those things. I think one of the scariest videos that I've seen, if you can still find it, it's been largely scrubbed from the internet, but there was a documentary film crew that went to videotape interviews with the children from the aerial school in in Zimbabwe. And Dr. John Mack was a part of that. He was there interviewing them, and just the descriptions that the children gave, and what they said was communicated to them is very, that's why I'm saying, like, I'm so much more interested in what's in it than what it is. Because everybody's like, we're gonna get this tech and we're gonna go to the stars. I don't know anything about that, but I know that what's bigger, that or the idea that we were never really alone here, you know? Because humanity has an orphan spirit in a sense. We've always felt like it's us. I mean, yeah, we have animals, but the only intelligent life here, allegedly, is humanity. But that's not what the traditions of various peoples tell us. I mean, you've got it for everything from, what's described in the Vimanas all the way to the legends of the Fey folk and the British Isles, and Native American lore is filled with these kinds of things, and people dismiss it offhand because it doesn't fit with certain frame of the universe that we've taken for granted. And I just don't think the explanatory power is really there. And I don't think that the way to get it is to dismiss the things that don't fit within your framework. I think that is information telling you to readjust your framework.
I'm trying to find a picture. You and I talked about it. It's a book that I had just stumbled upon. Um, and I'll find it in a second. But like, I like where you're going with this. Is it because I like it just, obviously because it appeals to me too. There's an unknown, a mysticism, a like a sense of something else that just right around the corner or over the next horizon, and maybe that's who we used to be, exploration. But but there is a mysticism there, right? You're like, to your point, when people discount something, oh well, that can't be, like, based on what? Like, well, aliens are friendly based on what? That they haven't killed. Like, if your argument is aliens are friendly because they haven't killed us.
That's a great point, Mark.
Yeah.
And I want to run with that just a little bit because you'll often hear people say the reason that we haven't made contact yet is because the aliens are looking at what a mess humanity is, and they're like, we're not having any part of that until these guys evolve to, be more mature and so forth. But again, going back to my point of like, if these things truly came from a completely alien background, like another world and all these things, number one, why the human things? And then why should we presuppose that their mode of thinking is even reasonably comparable to our own? Like, why think that they think like a person? Why think that at all? And if they're smarter than us, then we don't even have the hardware to understand how they think. So it's just pride. It's pride to say something like that, and it's rendering a moral judgment. We have no idea what if they have a sense of morality. It sure seems like they don't.
Hey, sorry, just kind of coming back. But I like that part right there because that's just another one of those, it's a logical fallacy. Again, we are, but look, we're forced. We have no choice. We see it through our own lenses because this is all we know, right? You don't know what you don't know, right? Type of thing. So we have no choice but to, or maybe we're just not advanced, intelligent, however you want to say it, enough to be able to take that step back. I mean, we have a hard enough time empathizing, like not sympathizing, but empathizing with other human beings.
Yeah.
Let alone how in the hell are we going to do that? So I like what you kind of said, because one of my things along these lines are, like if you want to argue, like this would be a good argument, in my opinion, if somebody said this to me. All right, Mark, you believe in alien life. Okay, let me just ask you a question, Mark. So if alien life exists, how are they able to walk around in our planet without any, without any negative consequences? And we're talking diseases, airborne pathogens, oxygen, like how are they, so to your point right there. Well, I mean, I don't know. Maybe they do come from, maybe Earth, maybe that's why, maybe we are onto something scientifically when we look for the Goldilocks zone type of planets, because maybe this is what produces these type of environments, or these type of planets, these type of atmospheres, ecosystems are what produce, eventually intelligent space, faring races. And everybody needs oxygen. But, again, you just go get good science fiction writers and they'll talk about hydrogen and, robot and all these different things. So, but, even if you did, I mean, would you, like, we would never do that. Hey, our first time on Mars, but Mars, let's just hypothetically say Mars had a breathable atmosphere. Do you think people would just be walking around Mars hey, we just got here, take your helmets off, let's just go jaunt around? Fuck no. No way, man. There would be, there would be all kinds of decontamination, going out, coming back in. You would be going out under oxygen until you really figured things out, because you don't know. And as Rick says from Rick and Morty, it's space. Literally everything here will kill you, right? Like it's space, man. Come on.
Well, that's a really good point because, H.G. Wells, the same guy that wrote The Time Machine, wrote The War of the Worlds. And The War of the Worlds, that's how they're defeated, is that they get exposed to microbes for which they have no adaptation. We're adapted to this planet and they still kill us. And,
Yeah.
I think that what you have to consider is like you look at some of these myths, like there's a book, um, called Masquerade of Angels. And it was written by Dr. Carla Turner. She was a professor of English literature, I believe, and she was an abductee. And that book is a biography on Ted Rice, who's still around, and he does podcasting now. He was silent for many, many years. And he said that he was given the opportunity to go and work at an elite, excuse me, resort lodge, like a ski lodge, when he was a young man. And he fell in love with this woman that was there, and her name was Maya, and they would go on walks together in the mountains and so forth. And she never really like did anything with him in the sense of like coming to the city. Like he would see her at the facility where they were working and that and on the hikes, but she was always very elusive and kind of I can't find the right word for this, but that's how she was.
Standoffish.
Yeah, kind of like that, even though he clearly had feelings for her. And she told him that she lived in the mountains. And finally one day, out of frustration, he confronted her and he said, I've been all through these valleys. There is no village in these mountains, so I know that you're not telling me the truth. And she said, no, we live in the mountains. Okay. We live inside the mountains. And the word Maya means illusion. That's in Hinduism, Maya is illusion. That's what they call the world. So I think that's a play on words, and I think you have to look to the mythology, like of, for example, if you look at it from like a biblical perspective, for example, it says that the angels were bound in uh, they were bound in glooms of dark, like I can't find the exact phrase, but they're bound in the earth, okay, and within the earth. And then some of them were bound like in the earth between the rivers Euphrates. And if you go back even further, the Sumerians have the myths about these gods before and after the worldwide flood, because the flood myth comes from the earlier epic of Gilgamesh, but it's an old story that every culture has a flood myth. But in the Sumerians, which is one of the older that we have, if not the oldest, then it talks about these teachers, which were divine beings, seven wise sages. There's that number again, sages before the flood, and then after the flood also, when they were semi-divine, no longer fully divine but semi-divine. But they were said to have come from the Absu, which is like underwater aquifers underground. And Ivan T. Sanderson, in his book of Invisible Residents, talks about the fact that there are actually more USOs, which is to say unidentified submersible objects, than there are UFOs, flying objects. But they're obviously transmedium in the sense that, this is not an impediment. And you see them moving through water because there's no drag on something that's warping space-time.
And I think that actually really started to break out in the UFO community, because that's been around for a while, what you're just talking about right there and describing. But with the Tic Tac, now we're actually hearing, fighter pilots talking about, well, then it's in the water and it's doing, so I think some of that is starting to be discussed a little bit more, or maybe we're just starting to see it. But what I also like about what you just said right there, because this is just one of these little cool snippet factoids for me. We know more about the surface of the moon and Mars than we do about our oceans. I mean, like, there's just so much information, so much there that's unmapped and unexplored, I mean, and, if you want to talk about ancient civilizations, if we just get off that littoral, right, that here's the coast and here's that kind of littoral fault.
Yeah.
Like, well, and seeing David Brin again, I just realized, I mean, fucking smart dude. He wrote these books like in the 80s, but he was talking about, when a civilization was going through its phase or whatever, it would do these, their settlements or whatever, or even just their technology at that littoral, because that plate tectonics eventually is just going to destroy all the evidence and bring back more of, the modern natural part of that planet. And you won't see, the remnants of whatever society or technology was there before. That'll all get cleansed. And then the planet kind of gets reborn a little bit. I mean, even for us, like, again, if we just go back to, like this again, if you want to take that, what is it? What are they saying? 11,600, give or take, years ago. When we look at the Younger Dryas, is that about right? Is that what we're kind of like estimating that flood period was?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, just think of how many, I don't care if it was stone or again, or maybe they had more advanced metallurgy or something, but that's over 10,000 years ago.
Yeah.
Like, you can't leave a modern car, in a person's front yard, after 100 years or so, that thing's gone. So what do we expect is going to happen after 10,000 years when it's, really exposed to elements and stuff? So I guess I'm just trying to like use that to bring back to what you're saying is I don't think we should discount or overlook or just like, pshaw on any of this stuff. We have no idea.
We have no idea. There's an aspect of Fortean research that deals with out of place objects, which are things that, for example, you would be like a modern artifact that's discovered in a strata of a geological layer.
Are you talking about that battery or that spark plug looking thing that was found? Is that one of the items you're talking about?
Yeah, there's other examples too, but I mean, I just think the world is
here's somebody in the 1800s mining for coal. Here's the strata of coal, which had to have been formed, under pressure and all that, thousands of years ago, and they're pulling that out, and all of a sudden they find like a circular gold item, or somebody's walking and they find in this rock formation this cool rock, and then the rock busts open and there's like a spark plug device. I mean, like, this is maybe some things can survive a little bit longer, but I do think that goes to, we don't know what we're talking about. I mean, we only put modern history, so some people won't do AD and BC, they'll do current era, well, however you want to do it. But like at that point, what is it really our current era? I mean, how far do we really even go back with history? And then, again, it was all hunter gatherers before that. Then how do you explain Göbekli Tepe? Or gold, yeah. How do you explain any of that?
Yeah, does any of the Cyclopean architecture is pretty much unexplainable. I don't think that's controversial, And does it mean it was made by aliens? No, but it does mean that our view of the world isn't comprehensive enough, and that we need to be humble about things,
And at least be willing to take that step back and be humble. I like how you said that, because then, we switch over to like Peru, South America, and not Machu Picchu. I'm going to slaughter the name all of a sudden, but, it's over 10,000 feet. It's very difficult for human beings to really live and thrive above, 10,000 feet above sea level. It is. I mean, I've operated at that level and it's not fun. But, so here we have societies, that were operating, above that level. What is that site? It's Pumu. It's
Pumapunku.
Yeah, there it is, right there, right on the tip of my tongue. And you're going to try to tell me that they did what? Same thing with the pyramids. Yeah, a bunch of slaves were pulling these rocks over logs. Really? Like, so we don't know, right? And then what's that guy's name that kind of did the weather erosion on the Sphinx?
Robert Schock, Dr. Robert Schock.
Yeah, that's it. Yep.
So yeah, there's anomalies there. Do you care if I do a quick plug
for your channel?
No.
Plug away. I mean, what are you plugging?
Cool.
I was hoping you'd plug your channel.
So if you are out in an alien invasion and you don't know where to go, you don't want to leave home without this. The EDC carry from Centerline Systems will get you from here to there. Notice the map feature, absent a map, but you can picture if there is a map in there. And you simply close it like this, and then you can take it with you. Centerline Systems. Keep moving. Keep thinking. I don't think I wrote it right. Never quit.
Keep thinking. Keep moving. Never quit.
Keep moving. Never quit. Okay, we can return to the regularly scheduled program now.
Yeah, we need to return to the regularly scheduled. But thank you for the little plug. That was kind of funny. I did not, boys and girls. I did not know that. yeah, I did not know that was going to happen right there, but it was
That's the
actually
best I got.
yeah,
That's
that
the
was
best
pretty
I
good
can.
though. I don't mind it. That was good. It's good. I don't mind
Okay,
it.
so yeah, Cyclopean architecture, some people speculate it's the giants because they're like, well, the aliens could be fallen angels. I've heard people talk about fallen angels or not. I mean, technically, first of all, the word angel means is malachim, and it means messenger, like divine messenger. Okay. So it's actually a job function, but usually when people talk about angels, they're talking about a spiritual being in a certain like hierarchy. And the truth is that there's not really a comprehensive system that anyone or everyone agrees on for that kind of idea. But every culture has the myth of the gods mingling with mankind, creating giants, and so they say the Cyclopean architecture. I mean, what was a cyclops but a giant? I don't know the answer to that, but I just think it's interesting that you can't really see the minute you start to step your toe into things like the extraterrestrial phenomenon. It was Jacques Vallée said that the abduction scenario I'm paraphrasing here, but it's identical to the traditional occult initiation rituals, um, and or astral voyages. I think is the language that he used. So all of these things ultimately, and this is why people get into these like these spiritual ideas, it's because how do you describe with language something that's so other and something that seems to transcend the boundaries of what we understand as a very physical world? That's debatable how physical it is, but especially now when they're coming out and saying, well, it's a hologram and it's simulated and so forth, which raises its own kind of like infinite regressive questions. But yeah, yeah, I don't know. I feel like I'm not really getting a solid thread here. Is there anything in particular topic you want to go over
No, I
as it
think we're
pertains to the
just letting it.
phenomenon?
No, we're just kind of letting it go where it is because I think at the end of the day, I mean, somebody said, well, that's not as interesting as talking about little green men. But at the end of the day, I think that actually is important because it brings into, again, your worldview, your perspective. You were mentioning, just even talking about extraterrestrials. We have no idea what their society, what their cultural norms, we have no idea. So, another, if you're into science fiction, um, I'll have to think of this. Maybe it's about, I think it's called The Man in the Maze,
Mm,
and it's a planet that's been discovered, but and like the only city has this like next to impossible maze, and part of the thing is trying to figure out why would this culture develop this maze because like this maze will kill you, right? But this is part of their city, right? So like again, what
mhm,
do we fucking know, right? What was the threat they were under? Where they felt that they had to take these actions to have their city like this. But the man who they try to hire to go and figure this out is a guy they had sent off on like the first, to meet the first real kind of alien species we've ever really
mm,
kind of contact with. And to Steven's point, so you got to look at it and just think from different perspectives. We don't know how this would work out. Well, they thought there was something wrong with him because they do a lot more telepathy. So they
mm,
fixed him in their opinion. But what they
mm,
did is now they made it so every other human around him, like no matter what, gets to hear and feel his thoughts and his emotions, like, so he's just constantly out there, right? It's like he's
mm.
wearing his skin inside out. We have no idea what any of that would be about. So we have to really kind of think about that and question that. So, and whether that's everything from, who we are as a people, how like an alien species would view or treat us, or even just, kind of back to the other thing is like, what does that even mean? Extraterrestrial, like, is it
Yeah.
really, interdimensional? Is it,
If you look at what people typically think of as a god or as an angel, are they from beyond this earth? Welcome back, Quest viewers. Today we're going to take. Yeah, that's a good
I'm
channel.
trying to, yeah, you already know what I'm trying to get you set up for a plug too.
Well, it might be a little bit because the holidays are busy before I come out with another uh review. So this is an area of it that I think is very interesting that people probably would think I'm a little bit strange for, and I would forgive you for thinking that. Let me see if there's a Gene. if you're gonna go hitchhiking, be sure to bring a towel.
If you-
I don't know if that's the reference you're making, but so this is one of the things, I think it was in David Grush's testimony before Congress, but I could be mistaken. But I remember them talking about the idea that they considered these crashes to be gifts, right? He said they're gifts. And that for me goes back all the way to like First Enoch, where you're talking about, again, these essentially extraterrestrial beings because they're from beyond the earth. By definition, they are that. Now, maybe that's not how you frame it in your mind, but that's what they are. They come down, and what do? They give man technology. They teach him like the melting of metal to form into weapons. Okay, rudimentary technology, but technology nonetheless. They teach agriculture. They teach the
and
beautiful.
before you go any further, I just want to
Yeah,
kind of throw out there, just so people understand, maybe because maybe you and I were being a little esoteric or too much, in our own little world. I don't think that's the case, but just look at all the mythologies, Greek,
yeah,
Roman, Norse.
yeah, exactly.
What the gods gave us fire, the gods,
Yep,
boom, boom,
Prometheus.
boom, 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 boom. So this isn't anything new. And
No,
so where did that
ancient.
come?
It's ancient.
Yeah.
And so crash retrievals as gifts, well, that's the technological gift of the Promethean fire. That's what's happening. And even if you look at, like, I think the production company that does the Skinwalker Ranch television series is called Prometheus. Like, they know what they're talking about. Like, that wasn't chosen accidentally. Like, don't tell me that. I'm not an idiot. I'm not like, Mensa or anything, but I'm not stupid. Like, they know what they're saying. And um one of the most important series that I ever read was by a guy named Christopher Knowles, and it was a series on his blog, The Secret Sun, and it's called Lucifer's Technologies. Okay, and it's public free access. If you're interested, you can find it again on his blog. But I'm feel free to talk about it. And what he talks about is the connection between ceremonial basically ceremonial magic or ritualistic magic that's taking place, and the nuclear bomb and the UFO phenomenon. So the White Sands test, I think, happened in 1946 or 1947, the same year that the UFO phenomenon really began, that the Roswell incident took place. And Roswell isn't far from the nuclear test site. Roswell means the red well, and in that series, he connects it to the idea of from Greek mythology of Cadmus and the well, which has this theme of extraterrestrials coming down and like teaching a language, and then he turns into like a dragon or a reptile like creature or something of that kind, and it creates this mystery cult or this mystery religion. And of course, the it took place. The operation that took place for the nuclear testing was called Operation Crossroads. And the crossroads in folklore is where you go to make a deal with the devil. Okay. And so if you look at it, if you read the literature on like, there's various sects of Satanism in that. And frankly, I think a lot of it gets kind of blown out of proportion and in a bit of hysteria, some of it. But they look at they look at it as a metaphor, and as I do, but in a different way. But they look at like the Garden of Eden story, and they don't see the tree of the knowledge of good and evil so much as the tree of knowledge itself. They view the Promethean fire as in the Greek mythos as a symbolic representative of the human intellect. It's that thing which separates mankind from the beasts, as mankind is the thinking animal. And so, everything that comes from the fire is technological and a product of our carnal mind. It's a development to make the suffering on earth eased. But it always has, it's always been a Faustian bargain where it comes with um, a shadow side to it. So, for example, in the same way that I'm able to talk to you virtually at great distance because of this technology, is the same kind of technology that changes the dopamine reward system of a child's brain, even an adult's brain, but particularly pernicious for them, and makes it where they have trouble keeping concentration. Or take, for example, the advent of agriculture that made food more abundant, but now our mouths aren't as robust as they used to be. You have more dental problems, and even the shape of the face has changed as a consequence of this. Our ancestors had thicker bones and larger brain volume than we have. So same things that breed convenience, breed dependency, and it ultimately weakens us because we don't have the stressors to adapt to anymore. But now
Well, and before you go though, I don't think
yeah,
that is just solely in the realm of the physical though as well. That's also societal. It's also spiritual. It's also mental. I think that that same thing where you can get into that. It's just so convenient. So you're not exercising those other muscles, you know, and that spirituality, that family, that community. That's still something that has to be exercised and maintained, right? And
yeah.
yeah, we've kind of gotten into if it's peaks and valleys, it seems that we might be in a valley right now, just a little bit of one, you know.
It's and it's you wonder, you look at the myth, right? And somebody that would take the side of like I think the Lucifer is a misnomer. Honestly, that comes from a Latin translation and it means bearer of light. Although you'll also often see that used interchangeably with the idea of Prometheus, because who bears the flame? Or like the Olympic torch, right? It's that the flame of, whatever excuse they make, but it's meant to represent this in here. It's the light bulb that goes on inside your head is the flame.
The
But
spirit.
yeah, well, that's a different context, but you're not wrong on that. That is true. Um, so the thing with the technology is like it's gone from we're a species that wields tools to now we're on the cusp of being a species where the tools wield us, where we've made ourselves obsolete. And that's something we've never faced before. We made horses obsolete when we came up with the internal combustion engine and created the horseless carriage. But, a horse was never employed because of its capability for cognition, right? It was a beast of burden. And so we replaced the beasts of burden because those were the lower hanging fruit. But now we're reaching a point where this Promethean fire from the gods, question mark, has led us to a place where it's going to potentially obsolete us ourselves. And so again, this is Faust making a deal. This is him gaining the world and losing his soul. And maybe in a more literal sense than we fully appreciate. It was Woden sacrificed his eye and hung on a tree to learn the secrets of the runes, which was a language. And today, when we create our digital technologies, when we create virtual worlds, we build them with language, which are symbols, and the magician uses symbols to conjure all kinds of things. And that's a whole, other system that's taking place there. But so what's the point of all this? It's like in that series, he talks about the connection between that and Bell Labs, which became Lucent Technologies in the 1990s, and their association with like the Manhattan Project. And it's just that there's too many things that match on us. They call it synchromysticism. It's a kind of like convergence of meaningful, what appeared at first to be happenstance or coincidence, but ultimately end up being like, if I have to accept that this is happenstance, then you're asking me to become an idiot. And I just can't do that. And so at that point, you just convert over and you start seeing patterns everywhere and you have to maintain your sanity. But
Just
all
on
that
that
to
note though, just
yeah,
before we
yeah.
go too far away, again, UFOs, but I think more and more people are starting to see that, as what you just described. I do think more and more people, for whatever reason, I personally think it's for the betterment of humanity. More and more
Yeah.
people are starting to see that, they're everybody's getting a set of the sunglasses from, Rowdy Roddy Piper, and they're starting to like, what the hell am I really seeing here? I think that people are starting to have a little bit more of an understanding, the cognition. And that's why I think, contrary to like some people just want to argue the drone thing, but okay, again, unless you're actually the person who's doing it, do we really know? I mean, and I think you're starting to see people at least being able to see the real headlines from the news articles or the magazines, again, using the They movie, They're starting to ask more questions, and I think that's a good thing. But to your point, that could also be the thing that kind of spirals this, potentially out of control, because at the end of the day, somebody's trying to control humanity, and somebody's trying to control what it is that we see, how we perceive it, what we're going to do with it. If this other technology, whether that's ancient technology or that's extraterrestrial in nature, if this exists, why isn't it being shared for the benefit of humanity? I'm here to tell you, I'm going to be personally a little pissed off if we come to find out that we've had anti-grav tech or interstellar capabilities, just even if it's just limited to our solar system. If we've had that for the last 20, 30, 40, 60 years, and we haven't been really doing anything with it to better mankind, whoever was in charge of that needs to be, fucking thrown in a thing with sharks and alligators and piranhas and every other evil thing that you can think of, because that's just some fucked up shit right there. Or it's going to go into a completely different set of individuals who view the world through a different lens, kind of like what you're kind of getting at, and they take a very different approach to just even how they consider and look at this.
I think it's easy for us, standing in ignorance as we are, to see the potential benefits, but maybe not fully appreciate what could be the negative consequences of mass market consumption of that level of technology. I mean, the same technology that brings us a nuclear bomb brings us nuclear power plants to a certain extent. And what if turning 0 point energy into a weapon is far more catastrophic than we really give it credit for? Or maybe perhaps they're looking, because a lot of these guys have had Thomas Malthus, like Malthusian kind of ideas, where it's like we're already dealing with a population problem, not in the West, but overall they've looked at it that way. And it's like, well, if we make energy free, what happens to scarcity? So what happens to the population? Does it grow without constraint? And then do we have like mass starvation and death because we just exceed the carrying capacity of the planet? I'm not saying I believe these things,
You
but
just made me think of it. And then back to
yeah.
your point earlier, and if we do that and we just keep making things easier, we are de-evolutionizing ourselves or moving ourselves out of the equation, right? Because just to one of my favorite Simpsons episodes, the like octopus aliens come down, and they got spaceships, but they don't have anything other than that. But they've got boards, like a stick with a nail through it, and that's what they use to take over the world, because we've become so stupid at that point in time. So kind of to your point, yeah, if we actually, and look, and that's actually a great point. I didn't think about that. We, not you guys watching, but we as a race, and it's not the same for every country, and it's different in different parts of the world, obviously, but we've become very lazy. I mean, let's just all face it. I mean, it's a good thing in many ways, like information at your fingertips. No one's got, I don't have the full Encyclopedia Britannica behind me, like, because I've got the full Encyclopedia Britannica times a million right here on this little stupid device right here. So there's some things that are really cool, but let's just all be honest with it. I mean, like, oh, Amazon, I'll do this. Oh, it's cheap. It's from China. I don't care if I have to do 10 of them in a year because it's so cheap and it's from China, and like all of that type of stuff. And I don't need to, like, this is kind of a personal thing, but I think it kind of feeds into, because just think this, if this is real, what I'm talking about, then this is a disease that's kind of like, at all levels of who we are as people. At some levels it might be worse than others, but there's a lot of people out there who don't take any time to do any of their own research. They don't read anything, I'll just say this, and I'm not picking on people. I get it. And, my job as a small business owner is to talk to customers, but I'll see somebody go right past the terms of service. Cause there's the contact us, or there's this. And I think somebody got mad at me the other day because they were asking about hoodies, Blackbeard, to this point. I'm like, well, I've already done 2 videos on it. And if you don't mind, just go watch, because you're asking me in an email to do everything I just did in a video. Well, just go watch the video first. And if you still got questions, like I provided the information. I don't think they liked it because they're like, why don't you just take 10 minutes out of your day and just redo the whole video with me. I'm like, man, but that's kind of, I think, to where we've become, Blackbeard. So maybe it's not a bad thing that we're not, if this technology exists, and if it is, based off of our ancient ancestors, ancient technology, or extraterrestrial, species, entities, maybe it is okay that we don't have it yet, because maybe we still need to get back to the school of hard knocks and being more resilient creatures, as opposed to having everything spoon fed for us. That's what I was kind of trying to get at.
The reason that in the myth that the angels were condemned for teaching mankind how to make weapons and how to use makeup and how to read the stars, and that is, you can look at it one of two ways. You can say that their punishment was unjust because they were just teaching us information, and what's wrong with that information that helped us. Or you can look at it from the fact that prior to that, if you wanted to kill somebody, you had to pick up a rock and it was in a small scale. But now, when you have weapons of warfare, now you proliferate the suffering that's caused by war. You make war more efficient. And now, when you have the beautifying of the eyelids or makeup and that, you increase promiscuity and lust. And reading in the stars means you start to try to maybe control a destiny that was never yours to try and control. I mean, I speculate on these things, but it's kind of like, it's kind of like someone getting upset on a certain level. It's like someone getting upset with you for not handing your 5-year-old a loaded revolver. It's like, well, why? It's just information. I was just showing him how to use it. And it's like, he's not equipped to use that. He's going to blow his foot off. So, you know, I think a lot of this is that, if they're seeding us, you have to ask this question: why are they giving us this technology? Because you have to figure too that if they have this technology and this is true and they're seeding it to us, if these crash retrievals are gifts and not, ooh, we screwed up. If these are gifts, then you have to ask, what is the intention of the giver? And is our society improving or declining since this thing? Um,
Or as General Akbar says, it's a trap.
is
Like,
it a trap?
maybe giving us that, maybe that's how maybe they just fight wars in a very different way. I'll give you the things that you're going to use to kill yourselves, because I'm a billion-year-old or a million-year-old society. I don't care if it takes you 100 years or 10 days, like, here you go. Let's see what happens, because that's how we fight war.
What I
Well,
can't,
because we're grays. We're only 3 feet tall anyway. We're not going to go toe to toe with frickin' Uncle Sugar. I mean, that ain't gonna
well,
happen.
if you talk to abductees or read any literature on that, they'll say that those are essentially hive mind biological robots that are operating on behalf of different entities. Is that true? It's just what people have told me, what I've read. Okay, so
Yeah.
I'm not making these claims for myself. I'm saying that's what I know. But that having been said, it's I think that what may be happening here is something maybe a little bit more nefarious, which is to say that, generally speaking, you don't see these things just like walking around, right? Or if we do, we certainly don't recognize them. That's a whole other story. If you look at the Greeks have a, I always forget the name of it. Let me see if I can find it real quick. Yeah.
Dude.
Xenia, Xenia. So the idea is that you always have to be hospitable to strangers because you never know if it could be Zeus in disguise. Okay. And in the Bible, the Apostle Paul says that many of you have entertained angels, but unaware. And the angels that appeared in Sodom and Gomorrah look like very handsome male persons. So there's a long, history of the gods looking like us. I mean, if you look at the depiction of the Olympians and all that, they all look like people, you know. Um, so all that to say is that there's questions about what these things look like, and how stable that really is. But what we do know is that even if they look like us, they're not. This is not where they belong. Like they're popping in and out of this place. If you look at the craft, they pop in and out. You talked about portals. People talk about being moved through solid object, which is also something that angels did in the Bible. They moved prisoners outside of a jail cell, basically through a wall. Um, so we're dealing with a level of an understanding of the fundamental nature of reality that's beyond what's traditionally accepted. More than that, though, um, there's a concept in Greek theater which comes from a divine. It was often plays about the gods, not always, but it's theater comes from theos, as I understand it. And they had a contraption at the end of some of the plays which was called the Deus Ex Machina. And what it was is that a god, that means literally, it translates as God from the machine. Okay. God from the machine. And what it would happen is that in the narrative of the plot, the protagonists would find themselves in an intractable situation. It's grim. This is the end of the play, and there's no hope and there's no way out. But a god would come down in a literal machine on the stage. It would come down and be the savior to save the day out of nowhere. Okay. And that was the God from the or in the machine. And there's a movie that came out not too long ago about the a humanoid artificial intelligence inhabiting a humanoid robotic frame. And the name of the movie was Deus Ex. And they just left off the machina because it's implied. You're supposed to understand that. And it's the same thing with there's a video game series that was called Deus Ex, in which you play as a cyborg in a dystopian future, right? A cyberpunk dystopian future kind of thing. So there's it's a play on words, but it's an ancient idea that finds a modern expression through God in the machine, or they talk about the ghost in the machine. You'll hear that phrase used
Yeah.
as well, the ghost in the machine. And I think that what's happening,
And
maybe,
honestly, just real quickly, I think that's been a
yeah,
little bit more acceptable, and that's found its way into like some other genres. And I mean, Ghost in the Machine is even like a big. I'm pretty sure that's a big anime. You know, it might have a slightly different title, but that has been introduced into our society. But I think it instead of Deus Ex Machina, I think it's Ghost in the Machine is a little bit more maybe prevalent, or maybe just more widely acknowledged or known or something. Weird way of
yeah.
saying it.
That's the all the fruits of the Promethean fire. It's the apple on your computer with the bite taken out of it.
Yep.
It's the series spelled backwards is the iris, which is the eye that's always watching. It's the eye in the sky looking at you, Alan Parsons Project kind of thing. And it all strangely, it's like they say, well, it's conspiratorial schizophrenia, view of the world. And it's like, yeah, I'm awfully sorry about that. It just seems to have pretty powerful explanatory power, you know?
All right, so here
So,
we go. It's Friday. It's we've been at it for about 2 hours. We are not gonna Joe Rogan the shit out of this one.
yeah.
No, Steven and I will probably talk on the phone afterwards for like another hour, but I'm not gonna put you guys through it. Hey, I want to bring it over to you, Steven. I got a comment to make, and then I want you to kind of like end where however you want. I mean, like you've kind of alluded to that you think there's some dark and nefarious, evil sides of this. Again, I think what I'm going to end it with is like, so we started with the drones. We don't know what's going on out there, I just see so many people like, well, it's this or it's that, or it's like, yeah, you might be right. I just don't know. So I'm keeping a pretty open mind because, again, for me, and I'm not hedging my bets. I just don't know. It could be our government because our government's really fucking stupid right now. It could be a hostile nation on the way out, just kind of a reminder of what they could have done, so keep your mouth shut, for the millions of dollars we bribed you or whatever, or you better not let, Cash Patel start going digging around and find out how many of your politicians we own. Again, it could be that. That's espionage, and this is an influence operation. I don't fucking know. It could be little green men, Possibly. So we started there. You know, honestly, I don't think we really talked too much really about, you know, ET and UFOs. I mean, we did, but I think we went in a direction I don't know if we anticipated, but really, like, what does that mean? And what does that mean for us? I think we both kind of got a little what's the word I'm trying to, like, how would that, like, just concerned, or just kind of like, you know, again, I'm not so concerned about the car. I'm concerned about the guy who bought the car. You know, like, I think it was a little bit of that. And I think you kind of led us in that direction. And then the one thing I kind of had forgotten about earlier, and I'm going to end it showing off Steven's channel, but here's a book. This is, I guess I could find out and look and see when I took this picture. This came up on something I was watching. I immediately reached out to Steven to see if he had heard about this. I'm going to try to find this on audiobook so I can listen to it when I'm cutting Kadura. It's called Humans Are Not From Earth. Now, and it's by Ellis Silver, PhD. Humans Are Not From Earth, Ellis Silver, PhD. So from my side, I'm going to end it with this because we don't know. So this, and I haven't read the book, but my understanding is the argument is that even we humans, we're not Terrans. We came from someplace else, or anyway, if you're open-minded, well, okay, maybe, you know, because we're not really adapted to this earth very well, you know, like, I mean, we're better, you know, than other things. But if you really like take a human being, throw a human being out in the woods by him or herself, the odds of survival are pretty slim. Whereas if you throw a grizzly bear or a deer out in the woods by itself, the odds of survival are probably you know, as high as the odds of survival for that animal are, right? So it's just some interesting, fascinating things. I just wanted to end it on that. Just keep an open mind. Aliens, you know, again, take, you know, Stephen kind of said this earlier, right? Just like, you know, take Occam's razor, you know, the simplest solution is probably right. You know, with every passing year, new revisions as we find more and more planets, and we're not even talking about, like, you know, the Goldilocks zone, but, you know, how many celestial bodies are out there right now, you know, and to sit there and say there's not some type of intelligent life on anything else, it's just us, we're just so special, you know, I think that's arrogant. I don't agree with that. I think mathematically that doesn't make any sense. And, you know, who I am as a Christian, I don't think the presence of extraterrestrial life in any shape or fashion shakes or even threatens, you know, my foundation, my understanding of Christianity. Well, no shit, there would be. Like, God didn't just create us. I mean, boy, you know, that's just weird. Why, you know, if there's a being with that, a God, really creates all this stuff and then just creates just little old us, I mean, like, that'd be pretty boring, you know. I don't know. So that's my comment. Keep an open mind, keep doing your own research, look into stuff, you know. I showed you the Y files and the Lore Lodge. There's other channels like that. They're good if you can put up with all the bullshit commercials on ScrewTube, or you make your own decisions. And one last thing I want to share with you, and then I'm going to turn it over to our friend and our guest here tonight. Here we go. Got it. I'll turn it over to Blackbeard in a second. But last but not least, here we go. This is Blackbeard's channel. He just started it off. Go give him a follow. Go watch. He's doing gear reviews. Yeah, you've done 2 so far, right, Blackbeard?
2, and there's more to come. I'm doing it as a labor of love, kind of. So not too worried about it. But yeah, if you're interested in that kind of stuff, I try to add a little humor in there. I don't really discuss aliens, but
no. But he did forget his saw against the tree one. But he did, in one video, he forgot his saw against the tree and was like, "Oh, why?" You know, it was like that. So yeah, there is a little bit of humor in there. I hope you keep doing stuff like that, because that makes it.
I don't film anything. I film it all on my cell phone. I don't use any drones. So for people that are really sensitive about drones right now, there's none of that. You don't have to worry about it.
Well, only if you were using Iranian drones. So I'm going to end it from my side on this. Steve and I were laughing the other day. We were bullshitting, but, you know, back in the 80s, it was the Libyans. Like, you know, that was the boogeyman. That was like, you know, oh, it's the Libyans, you know, and Back to the Future, you know, made a joke of that. Like, you know, the terrorists, oh, it's the Libyans, they're after me, Marty. Well, now it's like the Iranians. Everything bad that happens is now the Iranians. Oh, the Iranian. You're like, come on, man. Like, why can't we come up with a better? Why don't we just say it's the Martians? Let's
It
do
feels
something.
like it feels like a 1984 Emmanuel Goldstein kind of thing where he's this like nebulous enemy it's always this guy and everyone just hates him for no reason. It's just
Yeah,
because
you
they're
can't.
told to,
Yeah,
it's
you
like,
can't figure out why you hate them, but everybody just keeps telling you you're supposed to hate them. Yeah.
yeah. I've never even met an Iranian. So I don't know. That's a whole other thing. That's a geopolitical thing, and I don't even pretend that's in my wheelhouse, but oh, yeah, I don't know. The UFO thing is very interesting. I think it's more important than we realize for a lot of reasons. I think it's going to be important in terms of like geopolitics, to contradict myself there. But I think it's also going to be really important for spiritual reasons that maybe aren't really anticipated to the same extent. And that's what got me going on it. The Bible, especially in the West, but I've already copped to that. That's kind of like where I put my wagon. That's my worldview to a large extent, although it's a little bit unconventional, I think. But even that talks about that there were beings prior to humanity. It talks about the sons of God, that were there when the world was being created, and the beginning of Genesis. Its translation is actually um, questioned, whether it's positing an absolute beginning or whether it's talking about like an indeterminate point in time. It depends on how you
Yeah.
translate literally the
Yeah.
first verse of it. And it says that
Well, and
man
what
was
about
made.
and if you don't mind, just because you're already
Yeah,
saying
yeah,
it, can you weigh in
yeah.
on the books of Enoch as well then there, or is that just a separate conversation?
I mean, that's a little bit separate. That's basically
Okay.
an expansion of Genesis 6 to try and give some depth to that myth, which is not even a myth that's relegated only to that. Like I was saying, you have the Titans and the Olympians. Um, and
Yeah.
there's every culture has that kind of story of the giants. And what more conservative minded like professors would say is that, well, the reason that they said that there were giants was because the average height of an Israelite in that time was like 5 foot nothing. So
Yeah.
if you were over
5'2",
6 foot tall,
5'4".
then you were a giant. And of course, I don't land on that. That's not my opinion. I think we're talking about something far more bizarre than that. But it talks about the image of God, and I've heard people say that means you're a representative, which is true in a sense. But the word that's used there is shadow, and it has the connotation as of a literal physical representation. Um, so there's that's a long story, that whole thing, and nothing's absolutely certain. But what is certain is that we don't have it all figured out, and there are still mysteries left in the world, and some of them are great and some of them are very nefarious, and we're all here for it just by virtue of living. And maybe today it's a drone and maybe tomorrow it's a mothership hovering somewhere, I don't know, but I'll be here for it.
Yep. Or it's a giant kraken that comes out of the depths of the sea and starts devouring, New York, something,
I could
seriously.
use a change of pace.
Yeah, yeah, no, it wouldn't be bad, but I also like, I just got to throw this in there. I think one of the other things, and I hope you, the viewer, we're trying to have fun, obviously,
Do we have any viewers left? Are any of
yeah,
you
no,
out there?
well, I don't know the ticker. I don't know about the ticker. Whatever, if the ticker tells the truth or if it lies. But just thanks to everybody for even being here. I mean, like in today's day
Yeah.
and age, there's so many competing, things that you could be doing or watching. So just for anybody to watch these videos again, whether it's on demand or live, I totally appreciate it. But to your point, and that's why I'm saying, like we're doing this, we're trying to have fun. These are just like the normal kind of conversations that we have, like on a Tuesday night, right? And sit there and talk about this stuff. I hope you find it interesting. Thanks for being here. But my real big kind of like takeaway to kind of what you were just kind of, not necessarily ending with, but there's a lot more behind this. And we weren't going to try to like, so if somebody came in here like, oh, looking for the answer and like, here's what, the drones are like, that was never the intention. I just can't do it, right? Because we're not idiots. Because I don't know. I'm not in that operation.
The
I have no idea.
drones, it's a foreign actor or it's a domestic thing, and we don't know. But what we can surmise from it is that If they didn't want to be seen, they wouldn't turn the lights on, would they? Okay, end of story. So they want to be seen. I don't know what more to say than that. I
Yeah,
don't even
you can
care about the
speculate the
drones.
reasons.
I don't live in New Jersey. I'm sorry. I love you
Yep.
guys if you live in New Jersey. But like I was here, I want to talk about UFOs. I want to talk about craft that bends work that moves, through space time by warping it. I want to talk about that kind of thing. I want to talk about people that have these encounters, and it's like life changing. There's a guy, a Frenchman, who took on the name Rael. Okay, after he saw alien grays came to him and told him that they were the progenitors of mankind, that they were the Elohim that the Bible mentioned, and that there is no spirit. And by the way, you need to start having lots of sex and cloning everyone and worship science. And he created a religion called Raelism. And that's a whole other thing because it's literally the combination of Ra and El. Ra is the sun god, and El is the ancient name for Saturn, according to Philo of Byblos. Okay, so you put them together, and you have Sun Saturn, or the Saturnian sun, and their symbol is literally a swastika inside of the Star of David. And there was a whole thing in the news where you're like, "What is going on with this?" And they're like, "No, no, it's the sign of our religion." And it's like, yeah, but you have a solar symbol inside this a Saturnian symbol, and it's in your name too. Like it's like we're getting messed with here by forces that are, I don't know what to tell you, man. I think it's a lot bigger than what people may be thinking, and I think it's going to be a lot more important than what people appreciate. But the tunes will be changing shortly.
Well, no matter what, and that's just part of life, and the joy of being alive is like hands inside the ride. You don't really know. Do the best you can. Try to be as intelligent and prepared as you possibly can. Be like, well, for again, I ain't telling you what to do. This is just me. Be true to your friends. Be true to your country. Your God. Give love and support where you can, and where necessary, give violence. I mean, if need be, if that's what you have to do to defend yourself and innocent people, right? I mean, I don't know. Whatever does happen, should something happen, to your point, Blackbeard, is I hope it gets us off our asses. Honestly, I don't know how else to say it on my side.
I hope that it's nothing nefarious, but it is out of the norm, and people are right to be concerned about it.
Yeah,
It's just, I try to I see that right at the outset. Like that's face value. And then I try to look at things and ask, but what's the intention behind this? And sometimes things just seem to happen without any reason. And I admit that. But I think that a lot of things, like I was listening to a guy today trying to explain power dynamics according to an older model that came out of Italy, and he was saying how power wants to be seen, and that's how it exerts its power. But I don't think power wants to be seen. I think that power wants you to see an expression of it. Like for example, um, in Ephesians 12 in the Bible, it says that we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, powers, and rulers of spiritual wickedness in high places. The word there is archons, means rulers. And but what he's clearly saying is that, hey, this world is run and administered by things that are non-human, that are not human, and that they're not good for the most part. And so, we look at it today, and it's like, is our lens isn't that kind of mystical. Not
yeah,
some people's are, but it isn't. Today it's like science based. And so the expression of that phenomenon, I think, that we see is it's Space Brothers and spacecraft. And and Jacques Vallée talked about the elusive nature of that. There's even some people make connections between the fairy circles of British folklore and the idea of crop circles. Um, and the Fae would come and steal your children at night. Well, what does that sound like? I mean, that's alien abduction. It's an alien force taking you out of your room in the middle of the night for whatever purposes. And then some abductees say that they're forced to eat certain things. Well, that's part of Fey lore too, is that if you eat something from the fairy realm, you can never return to the normal world. So there's a connection in that, and um, all I'm saying is that, they were never right to steal the mystic worldview from us because it has good explanatory power. And the reason that it does is because it's willing to step into the areas of the unknown without fear. And science is the opposite of that. It says, I'll trust only what my carnal mind on average can perceive. But we can never perceive more than the possibility that we hold within ourselves. And the more that we limit that, the less that we'll see. That's the truth. Every science experiment has to get filtered through this. It can never be objective. They try to make it objective, but it can't be. And I'm not saying that science isn't useful. I'm just saying it isn't comprehensive and it can never be. And it'll never get us where we want to be or where we
And
need to
we
be.
and we have unfortunately, or evil has successfully moved that into a whole new realm here in the last 4 years as well. And what is science? And apparently science is one person who used to be in charge of some shit, because that's what his claim was. I am science. Hey,
Evil
as we're
is that.
wrapping it up here, just
Yeah.
real quickly, I'll give you one last comment here. But there was just some. Again, we don't normally do the read the chat. That's for you guys to talk. We're sitting here trying to focus. I know that sounds stupid, but it's not easy to do. Just listen to your guest, think about your next thought. Maybe get something popped up, and then do the chat. That's why the big guys, the big channels don't do it, because you can't keep up with it. But some things I saw that came through, and I just want to give everybody a shout out. Thanks for being here tonight, taking the time out of your lives or your schedule, or maybe you and your family think this is funny and you're all having a drink, which that would be cool. But Savagely was making some good comments. Go back and look at his comments, talking about cryptids, and he made a good joke about Bigfoot. But I do like Gene's comment that was nestled in there. And instead of new world, he did the new world order is coming from Centerline Systems. I like that. If we can create our own world order or something like that. I don't know. That sounds stupid. It was funnier in my brain when I said I was going to read it when I read it, but when I just did it, it wasn't as funny. Again, Savage Lee had a bunch of good comments. Learn me something, talking about some pre-flood technology. Again, do your own research. There's, the Y files. There's a bunch of them out there. Jimmy Corsi, what is he? Bright Insight. Oh, I should have had him pop up too. He talks about Atlantis. He talks about Göbekli. I always screw that up. Tepe in Turkey. He talks about that quite a bit. The Sphinx. He's really good. Jimmy Corsight from that's Bright Insight. The Y files. Good comment right there. And then Gene was doing a Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, and he was talking about a towel, which I thought was funny in the movie, because, the movie was okay. It wasn't well, again, I don't know. I haven't read the book in forever and a day, so maybe the movie is really good, but I do like it because it's a towel. But that is one of the most important items you have when you're traveling through the galaxies. You have to have a towel. So good job, Gene. Great reference. Learn me something. And then Gene goes from a great reference to talking about the crab ship with Zoidberg from
Futurama.
From what?
Isn't that Futurama?
Futurama. Yeah. Futurama. Yeah. All right. And then Gene just saying, thanks guys, opening up his mind. Blackjack and hookers aside, again, that's Bender from Futurama right there too. All right. Blackbeard, take us on out, my good man. Thanks to everybody for watching. Blackbeard's going to give us, one last data dump and philosophical, or Blackbeard's wisdom. By the way, if you notice, Blackbeard's beard is a little bit more robust. He's trying to grow it out.
It's only a matter of time. I have to hide from the aliens. They can't recognize my face, Mark.
All right. What do you got for us, brother?
I think the one of the biggest questions that we've always had is, are we alone in the universe? And then we talk about the Fermi paradox and things like that to justify maybe we're not. When we look to the ancient myths of so many of the different cultures, they've been telling us for ages that we've never been alone.
Yeah.
That's never been the case. And in our pride, we've said that they were all fools because of their non-scientific worldview, and that are the ones who are on the cutting edge of figuring it out, and we know less now than they did. And so it's when you want to go, he who humbles himself will be exalted, and he who exalts himself will be humbled. So it would do well for all of us to just keep an open mind about it. I'm not saying that you have to believe these things. And I hold these things with varying levels of conviction. It's not like an on or off switch for me. It's like I'm largely persuaded on some things and uncertain on others. And I always try to disclose that because, I think one of the great shames is for you to just take somebody's thoughts as your own, and abdicate the own privilege that you have for using your own mind. So, but I think that the extraterrestrial phenomenon is real, and the full nature of it, I think we don't fully comprehend, but it makes us comfortable to think that we do. And I think we need to learn to be comfortable with the discomfort, as ironic as that may sound. That mysteries are by definition mysterious, but they're also the spice of life. And it is the glory of God to conceal a matter and the honor of kings to search it out. So I think that it behooves us at this time that we're here for a reason, and that the search should continue because, as the X-Files says, the truth is out there.
And it is out there. We just got to find it, and just, and look, you might not find it until you're taking that very last breath of your life. I mean, that realization might come right then and there. And, that's okay, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. Blackbeard, thanks for coming on tonight. Boys and girls, thanks for watching. Again, live from Third Rock from the Sun, that big blue marble Terra. Here we are. Yeah, we're not alone. Come on, man. The truth is out there. There's no way we're alone. And I think those ancient texts and manuscripts and religious, however you want it, like in our, and stories clearly indicate that. So to paraphrase or to repeat, Blackbeard's final comment, it's our arrogance that prevents us from seeing it, and, Blackbeard, maybe we do this again and we just do no drones, we kind of got that. Maybe I screwed up by bringing up the drones. We should, but let's just do just the UFO thing, because we didn't even talk about half the things that I had in my brain ready to keep going with and discussing. Again, I like where the conversation went, but maybe we look at this and, you already know I got to make a schedule for, January and February anyway. So maybe we just come back over, we can get, Redbeard in there because again, he is geeking out about some of that technology and where that goes and what that could mean. And then BCP can talk a little bit about the paranormal. And then we just kind of keep it a little bit focused on that. So, hey, guys and gals, I just came up with that. We just talked about it, but like you tell me what you want us to talk about. I've got a stupid game plan in my brain for how I'm doing these CLS After Darks. Let's just say there's 4 in a month. Well, 2 of them are going to have something to do with the military, whether it's the VA or, military affairs, military stories, just because it's unfortunately so important in our lives right now. And it's such a big part of, my life and the lives of other people. And then I want one episode like this where we just have fun talking about paranormal shit, cryptids or pop culture, whatever the case is. And then a fourth one is kind of like a floater, which might be very specific to one event or one, whether that's current affairs or something more specific, like an expose on Elon Musk or some shit like that. Or maybe Elon Musk is my guest. He definitely gets an episode if he wants to come on. Elon, you are welcome here anytime, sir.
I'll make some phone calls, Mark. We'll get him on.
Could you help out with that? I mean, seriously, I really would like it. And with your new beard, doors should open for you.
That's what I'm hoping.
Yeah. As that's growing out, doors should just open for you. Just period. No, nothing. I like it.
Sure. Why not?
Especially if you had like a really nice, like cool hat, I would just be like, welcome, sir.
Oh, I didn't realize your face was so naturally warm now. Please come in. You
All
must
right.
be from the north.
Yeah, or you're just a geek. All
Yeah.
right. Hey, there we go. We are geeks, and I hope you guys had a fun time being geeks with us here, or you had a lot of alcohol to drink. You do you.
I think they need it. I think they
Yeah,
need it.
seriously. Right. Uh, uh, oh, there you go. So somebody just chimed in at the end. Good show. He had it playing in the background. Now he didn't admit if he was drinking while it was playing in the background, but hey, anyway, seriously, thanks for everybody for being here tonight. If you're live, or if you're on demand, seriously, leave comments in the afterwards, because I got to start bringing on guests. What?
No,
What?
it's just, they're funny.
What's
And then
what was?
Clint says geeks. We're so guilty. He's so
Oh, hey Clint.
he's
Hey
so on
Clint,
point.
why weren't you here tonight talking about how we could shoot those fucking things down, man? Hey, but it's good to see Clint over here. By the way, Nemesis camo. Yeah, baby. Good stuff.
You
I
should
hope you watched the video of the we're gonna call it the ham roll, but I showed off the new G3 or the variation all in Nemesis, and it looks really sweet. So yeah. So all right, what else? Final comments on your side, Blackbeard. It's the Minnesota goodbye. If you don't know it,
I'm
Blackbeard.
seeing that. I'm seeing that. It always seems to emerge here.
Yeah, well, can you explain to everybody what that
Nemesis is a
is?
pretty sexy camo. I'm not gonna lie.
Hey, hang on, but can you explain to everybody? Well, besides how sexy Nemesis is, you can say that too.
Yep.
But explain to everybody what the Minnesota goodbye is.
Yeah. So the Minnesota goodbye is basically a goodbye that outstays its welcome. So it's a goodbye that begins, and then it is kind of like the Cyclopean architecture, in that you can have the passings of aeons and floods and whatever, and it still hasn't ended yet. So
I was just taking a sip of wine. Don't make me spit that out on camera, man. That was pretty funny. It's the truth, though. You're
yeah.
deep in it. We're like, and then like, oh, okay, goodbye. And then like, oh, so how is your daughter doing in volleyball? Like I thought you were saying goodbye. Are you starting up a whole nother conversation? Well, we have successfully done that here tonight. So welcome to your first Minnesota goodbye. If you haven't noticed that or experienced that in the past, thanks for being here tonight. Big hats off to Blackbeard. Blessed be his beard.
No, Mark. Big hats on to Blackbeard.
Ooh, yeah, forgot about that. There it is, right there.
Yeah.
Everybody should get one of those ready for Christmas. Have that on the top of your tree.
Made in USA.
Next week, no live stream on Thursday. We will do CLS After Dark, and we're just going to have a fun time. So I've got 2 crayon eaters. Those are, I guess, more popularly known as Marines. Just good human beings, great people. But they're going to come on. We're just going to sit and just, have an after Christmas kind of special, just fun, and just talk shit and stories and just, whatever for a couple hours. So that'll be next Friday. And then, and at that time, I'll have a schedule ready for you for January and who's going to come on and what we're going to talk about. I've got, again, as you can probably imagine, I've just been busy. We've been trying to, complete as many orders for Christmas, doing it to standards, not to time, but, worked all day today, working all day tomorrow, working all day Sunday, just trying to get stuff done before Christmas. So I haven't done a lot of product videos, but I'll start doing that again, end of the year, beginning of next year. I already got a bunch of them already figured out and ready to go. So, all right, that's all I got. Blackbeard, see how the Minnesota goodbye continues? End it.
I'm going to end it right now. Since I won't see any of you guys, I mean, maybe if you're in the chat, I'll talk to you. If you're not in the chat, join the chat. It's, what is it, CLS Gear chat or something?
Yes, CLS Gear chat over on Telegram.
The other thing is if you're on Facebook, I created a group that's called CLS Gearheads. There's a guy in there that doesn't watch these, as far as I know. He's not in the chat, but he's like asking me, he's like, how do we get more people in here? So if you're on Facebook, then join that group. It's CLS Gearheads. And then we can like show off pictures and stuff. So
fucking reactivate my Facebook account. Thanks for I haven't been on Facebook for years, but okay. All right. CLS.
It's not an official group, it's just my group, you know what I mean? Okay. So yeah, so do that. And then since I won't see any of you though, Merry Christmas, because that's
Yeah.
coming up, So Merry Christmas, and I hope that you have a great time. I hope that if you have loved ones, that you get to spend time with them, and not worry about drones and not think about UFOs, but just think about, what that time means with the people that you love. So that's my final statement.
All right. I'm just going to take that and parrot it on the way out. I mean, Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, God bless. Hope everybody has a great, rest of the weekend, Christmas or Hanukkah with your family next week. And we'll see you again on Friday, the 27th, just to have some fun and have a drink and just bullshit and, whatever. Do leave comments, if you want to see specific things discussed going into next year. I'm going to start working on that. And again, huge thanks to Blackbeard taking the time out of his busy day to sit here with us and converse. And thanks to all you great, men and women here on, planet, Earth, Terra, whatever. And, hanging out here with us tonight. God bless you. You know the deal. I know I say this over in Centerline. I guess I don't really have an outro over here on CLS After Dark. So I'm not even going to start with an outro. We'll just see you next Friday, right? How about that, Blackbeard? Yeah, there it is. We'll just see you next Friday. All right, everybody. Thank you. Be safe. Be good. And we'll see you next Friday. All right. Thanks now. That was a lame outro. That was about as good as Cousin Husband's Woo, in last night's video. That was lame. I'm going to have to work on that, Blackbeard.
Okay.
That was weird. That was lame. I'll do better, boys and girls. I'll come up with something. All right. We'll see you guys next Friday. Take care.